school calendar discussion, if there's no objections. So what I did for the public, Mr. Harley, Madam Vice President, and board members, we would like to talk about the 2021-22 school calendar. Hyperlink, there are 2 proposed calendars, and I'd like to go over them in a minute. But before I do, quick summary. We give you one that starts before Labor Day and one that starts after it. And then we're going to talk about Ictc alignment and see what your thoughts there. So allow me just to pull up a screen here and share one of my tabs as we go through. So the first thing I'd like to do tonight, again, is talk about our 21-22 school calendar and look at some options. Now, again, we just informed the committee that our goal was to create you 2 options for your consideration, one that starts before Labor Day and one that starts after Labor Day. And no matter which one you pick, what we did was we tried to build this around some priorities. First and foremost, our biggest priority is going to be allowing time for data teams and testing and meetings to occur. Right now, we haven't built enough time for that, and we're requiring subs to come in. It's a disruption. So we wanted to plan for that purposely, and we did that. Second thing we want to do, we want to continue to make parent engagement a focus of what we're doing here in the district. So what we did was we built in 2 parent-teacher conferences / APTT, which is academic parent-teacher team nights. And then additionally, what we did was we built in 3 more outreach and communication events with our families that we could plan throughout the year. Because our thought was it's imperative that we reach out to our community and our families. Sometimes it's difficult for them to take off work. So we have authorization under current collective bargaining agreement to allocate 1 in-service day to break them down into 4 2-hour chunks in order to have some evening events. And the focus will be parent outreach as we want to continue to strengthen that. And then I'll go over in a minute, but those are our priorities. Now, what I previously sent to the boards for their consideration, I understand that those who are viewing us, the public now, it may be difficult to see, is we have 2 versions, one on August and one that starts in September 7th. If I could be real quick, is highlight the orange squares. They're a little different. They're unique. Those will represent our back to school nights and also represent the 3 family engagement nights. And I'll go over that in a minute, but you can click on the hyperlink from the agenda itself to see it. And we wanted to give the board 2 options to talk about here in a minute. If you ask me what some of the highlights are, our back to school nights are earlier than usual, and they're going to be 6 to 8 p.m. And they're going to be in the first 2 weeks of school, sometimes in the 3rd, 4th week of school. We really wanted to focus on getting them done earlier and make sure that we have time to meet with our parents and connect with them. So September 1st and 2nd would be East Pike and Ben Franklin. And on the 2nd would be Ike and Horace Mann. And then the following week would be the secondary. What we wanted to do here, Mr. Harley, was really break it up. So if a family has kids in all schools or 2 out of 3 schools, we try to mitigate how much they're out in one evening. So we broke it over 2 weeks. Now, we can always change it based on the board's druthers and selection, but we at least wanted to try to be considerate to our families who may have multiple kids in multiple buildings. As I discussed before, we also embedded parent engagement nights. There's going to be 3 sessions. They're going to be 2 hours in length, November 4th, March 16th, and May 24th. And the goal there is to try to treat some support, awareness, and understanding of what we're doing programmatic-wise, but also, if need be, provide additional time for parents to meet with kids who may need intervention support or just a basic update about what we're doing. But at this point, we think we need to continue to outreach to our families and make them aware what our programming looks like, what we're doing educationally, and make sure they have some involvement before it gets too late. It's also going to be in alignment with what we're doing with our data practices and data work. So we think this has potential to be impactful, be powerful, and we hope it does. And we also pick nights at times that are hopefully conducive to parents. Now, each school will have some flexibility to develop their nights based upon their needs, based on their family's needs, and based on their priorities. For example, at the high school, maybe they want to do Indiana Career Ready Night, where they're reaching out to parents about what we're doing in the area of career and college readiness. So it has a lot of flexibility, but again, our point was, yeah, we may not know exactly what each night's going to be dedicated to. We know this. We have a responsibility to connect with our families, to outreach more, and to make them aware about what we're doing in a non-intrusive manner where they don't have to call off work or inconvenience themselves, where we can do this 3 times a year and still be able to make those meaningful connections. And then lastly, what our calendar does is it also builds in our academic parent-teacher teams. Each one of the schools are going through the training right now, and it's basically a new way of doing our parent-teacher conferences, and we identified them on October 11th and March 7th from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. I know this will come up, so I thought I'd head it up front. You may be asking yourself, well, Mike, I get it. You have a option to start us August 30th or September 7th, but what about the other schools? And as of now, this is what it looks like across the county. But I have to be upfront with you, Mr. Harley, and the rest of the board. I don't know if this is going to stick to if this is going to be permanent, meaning the other schools and superintendents and I spoke, but this is just like you tonight. This is up to their boards and things may change. However, the one thing I will say, if you go with the August 30th start date, even if they all change and some go August 25th, you're only looking at a 3-day difference. And so I don't think that's really a big concern, and it would not have an impact on an area of ICTC students, meaning they can still meet their legal requirement of hours, which is 1050 for most programs of study and 1250 for cosmetology. So we wanted to give you some options. We think that is important for you to discuss when you want to go, before or after school, before Labor Day or after Labor Day. And then the last thing I want to address before we entertain any questions is you may have some questions like, are there any extra costs associated with the parent engagement nights? No, there's no extra staffing cost. There is contractual language that allows us to conduct these nights. But the big thing is we would need to provide 60-day notice to the association. Now, again, it's only February, so we're well ahead of that notice. But we wanted to be open and transparent with not only the association, the board, but also our families, what we're here trying to do and give it a chance to make it work. But 60-day notice would be required. The only thing I would see money being involved is if we wanted to do something for food, like have a parent engagement night where we offer spaghetti or something of that sort. But again, I would come back to the board. We'd have that conversation. And quite frankly, we're not there yet. We know this. The board values communication and transparency. So we want to embed some extra time moving forward with those nights. Here's the things I think need to be addressed, whether it's tonight or the next meeting. I'd like to hear from you. Which version do you like? Do you want the before Labor Day start or after Labor Day start? Or do you want me to come up with something entirely different, which could be aligning with the ICTC, which is August 25th, their start date? Are you comfortable with the idea of having the back to school nights a little earlier? And are you comfortable with the parent engagement nights? And also, in this calendar, we only build in 3 snow days. But remember, we also have FID days that we can use, or we can just simply add days on at the end of the year. And then you have to think about the 3-day difference if the start date is August 30th with ICTC. And then if you're willing to and wanting, can we bring the calendar forward to our next meeting or our second meeting in February just to try to get this done so we can communicate with our families. I know with that said, Mr. Harley, there's a lot there. I'd like to turn over to you and the rest of the committee and see if there's any discussion or questions that we can address at this time. But that's what we're looking at as far as start dates with 2 options for the board.
Okay, let's start with the committee. Does the academic committee have any questions? Then we'll go to the board. How about the board?
Sorry, I raised my hand. I'm thinking that the August 25th start date is a great idea. With ICTC being the hub point where all the schools are sending students there to learn, they're going to be the ones that I'd like to stick with their schedule. But also, if it gives our students 3 days in class and then a weekend, if we're back to having in-school teaching, then I think it'll give them a small sample to start to get used to going back to school, and then give them a 2-day break to go, okay, now I know what to expect. I can get back into the swing of things a little, give them a gradual kind of start. So that's my thought.
No, that's good input. Mr. Harley, would you like me to call the people that raised their hands, or would you like to handle it, sir?
I'm not seeing them all. So I see Tamara, so we can go with her. But
yep, I think next is Miss Leeper, followed by that by Miss Cinda.
Okay, go at it, Gareth.
Okay, so I actually like the later start date, but I do have a question. In the past, we have provided transportation to the ICTC kids whenever we started later than ICTC. So would that still be a possibility?
Yes, ma'am. That we definitely could do that if the board so chooses. Absolutely. Yes, ma'am.
I think that, I'm leaning toward my thought of being September 7th. I think it really did a lot for us this year. And just with all of the changes that we're making and all of the learning that has to take place over the summer, and being mindful of the fact that we don't know what next school year is going to look like yet, I think the extra time to have to plan for that like we did this summer or this school year would be beneficial.
Yes, ma'am. Miss Cinda?
So my thought is always that I would like our schedule to be aligned with the ICTC, but I think I want to say that in a different way. I wish ICTC would align their schedule with the majority of the sending schools. We are their customers, and without us, they would not be there. And the idea is to educate our students. And I really think that not this year, I know, but it's every year so far, there's been an effort to get the two schedules aligned, and it never happens. I wish it could be worked out. I think Tammy has really good points about, getting back to school and starting with a few days and having a break. I think Tamara also has valid points. My main concern with the situation always is that I do not want our ICTC students to miss any of their days. If we start 3 days late, that means every shop at ICTC where they get started on the first day at ICTC, they get everybody oriented, get everybody assigned, they do their safety protocol lectures, they do all of the things they do at the beginning of the year, and then 3 days later, they have to do it all over again. So it's not only lost instruction time for our students, it's also lost instruction time for all of the other students. So I'll go with whatever the group decides, but I really would like to see ICTC align their schedule with the rest of us.
Yeah, I think those are great comments. I wish, we didn't get to meet with them yet and talk to them yet, and I wish they would. Maybe we can have that conversation a little bit more in detail. Again, because Miss Cinda, I agree with you. We don't work for them. They work for us, and there should be a little bit more spirit of cooperation, which I think we can have that conversation. I'm sure they're willing to do. And that's why we're having a conversation now on our end. And who knows? I don't know what the other schools are going to do. Like I said, I spoke with the other superintendents, and that's what they're thinking. And things could change. So yeah, I think those are all good points. Miss Cinda, I see your hands up again. Is it another comment or just up?
It's another comment or a question.
Yep.
Last year, did we allow the ICTC students to start school early? Did we send buses for them so that they could go even though the rest of our school wasn't in session?
I know we did my first year, but Wade, did we do it the second year as well? I believe we did, but I can't recall.
I believe so also, Mr. Vukovic, and we would make provision if we did that again.
Okay, because how was the attendance? Because I think the ICTC students really take that part of their education as they really like it. So I would think that the attendance in the early days would have been very good. Is that correct?
Yes, when we tracked it, it was around 85%.
Okay, good. Maybe we can do that if ICTC won't change.
Absolutely. Ms. Leeper?
So we've talked about this every year, and I too struggle because I think that the vocational professions are very needed, and I do want to support those students. And I think Cinda made a fantastic point. We are their customers, and right now they're aligning with 2 districts in our whole county. And I just think that speaks volumes, Cinda. Thank you for bringing that up. And I think that, yeah, that is definitely a talking point for the future.
Mr. Kerr, I see your hands up, sir.
Yeah, and I was going to say what Cinda said. I really have trouble understanding why the ICTC won't be more cooperative with the majority of the school districts in the county, unless there's some reason that they cannot do it. And if there is, share it with us so that we don't have this frustration year after year. But I agree. I mean, I think they need to be open and more cooperative. I'm not in favor of starting August 25th. It's too hot. We've been through that a bunch of years, and I'm leaning toward the September date start date. So somebody use their magic and negotiating skills and get them to cooperate. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Harley, that's all the questions we have from board members, sir. I'll turn it over back to you. See
Well,
if you want to insight.
I have a couple comments, Mike, if I may. I'm concerned that if ICTC actually starts on the 25th and we don't start till the 7th, that's 9 days of instructions that's missing. So that's of concern. I'm a little less concerned with the 3 days, but I agree with Cinda. It doesn't make any sense that they're starting with 2 districts on the that early. All the districts have the same problems that we do. Can you tell me how many of the days throughout the year we're missing with these students, or do we not have that detail yet?
No, sir, I have not. I do not know that information in great detail. I know, as the board has requested before, we are working with 3 other school districts to have a countywide in-service day on January 17th. But other than that, I don't know where the calendars lie with the different schools, as everyone's just starting the conversation now, sir.
We have an ongoing problem where our ICTC kids were missing. They weren't in school with over 10% of the days that the ICTC was in school when the calendars didn't align. So although I understand the hope to get later in the year for the actual temperature, I don't like to be that misaligned with the ICTC. So if they could slip their days back a few days and we slip ours forward. One of our problems in the past has been we've tried to coordinate that with the ICTC, and our coordination was that they match our calendar. I'm certainly willing to match our calendar to cooperate with the calendar across the county. So I'm in favor of that. The other things that we're talking about with your in-service days and those kind of things, they seem to make sense and be logical. So I think the only thing that's really on the table is getting coordinated with the ITCC, and the start date is, we're within 3 days now with the majority of the districts. I just don't see how we can start after Labor Day and our kids miss 9 days of ICTC. So that's where I am. Do you think you'll have this any farther along for the next board meeting?
What I could do is I can have a conversation with the other superintendents to see where they're at. Again, that slide I showed you, that was just a conversation between me and the superintendents. It does not mean that their boards have approved it, so I can maybe follow up on that conversation. I know this. I don't think I can get everyone to after Labor Day. I can try to do my best for August 30th.
I understand that. Can you move them to the middle of the next week? Maybe.
I will try, sir.
Yeah. Why don't you put this on the agenda for a discussion for the board so that the board and the public is aware of what we're talking about.
And one quick question, Mr. Harley, would you like me to make a schedule or calendar that mirrors the August 25th start date of the ICTC, or the ones I gave you, are they sufficient, meaning the August 30th and September 7th? Albeit you have to discuss and debate which one you want, but are you okay with the 2 options I provided, or would you like a third?
I don't see moving it forward to the 25th is a viable option. So I'd assume keep the 2 options you have on the table, and let's see what we can do with them.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Is the committee okay with that? I think it's
I'm okay with that.
Hammer and Tammy. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think we should vote on it next meeting. I think we need more discussion, but I think to have it as a discussion point, as you said, Tom, is perfect.
Yeah. And Mike will have another 7 days to work on it, or Rob, or somebody who resigns it to. Sorry, Rob.
I agree about the discussion part. Yeah.
Yeah. But at least let's put it on. And Mike, if you have, let's make it a presentation. Okay. And we can just talk about it then. Okay.
I do have a question.
Yes, Mr.
So do we know if the districts in the county start on whatever the date, the 30th? Are they doing that to align with ICTC? Do they have the same desires as we do? I shouldn't say as we do, because I think we have people that we hear from both sides that they would like to start after Labor Day, like used to happen many, many moons ago. But do you have just a general feeling of why the county schools start when they do? Is it because of ICTC?
Yeah, and in talking with them last week, it seems like, ICTC was first to the punch, got this out to all the schools and said, hey, this is what we're looking at doing. Then one or two schools fell in line. And then, some of us came back and said, well, is there any conversation about maybe starting later? And that's where we're at. So if there is a spirit of cooperation, I don't know why they came out as early as they did, and I can dig a little deeper, and I'm sorry they don't have that. But I know there's a spirit of cooperation among the superintendents to try to get something aligned together. And we're making some strides. I just think we need to continue to work there, and it's all contingent upon what their boards want to do as well. So I know that really doesn't answer your question completely, Mr. Leeper, but that's what I know at this point. But we are trying to work together and get some common structure. And really, the reason why we picked the 30th was because one of the supers emailed me, and I said, oh yeah, the 30th, I'm giving my board two options. I don't want to go earlier than 30th. And then it kind of cascaded, a couple other supers said the same thing. So that's how that conversation came across. And I had a meeting last Thursday with the supers, then asking everyone, all 7 schools, what they were doing. That's how I got the 2 outliers. And I think that was based upon possibly their board's preference, meaning August 25th. So we're a little bit more work to do my end, but that's where we're at.
Mike, does the ICTC calendar go through the Joint Operating Committee?
Yes, sir. It certainly does, sir. Their board has to approve it. Yes, sir.
Has it been approved yet, or is it?
No, it has not, sir.
Okay, so this is still a work in progress on all 8 school districts.
Yeah, yes, sir. It is, sir.
Okay, so we have some opportunities here.
We do, and I'm just trying to get you ready for it and give you some options. So I know how sometimes these can be difficult planning, to give you some options to start thinking about. And even if we do it next week or the week or the 2nd February, the meeting in February, or even March, I just want to get on everyone's radar. That's all, sir.
Yep, that'd be fine. Can we move on?
If there's no other further questions, I can move on.
Okay, go ahead.
We're asking permission to write 2 more grants. A high mark grant we wrote last year for, and we were awarded some funds. And then there's a federal grant from the community schools grant. We don't see us being likely at all to get it. In fact, it's very unlikely we would, but we at least like to try and give it a shot. I think the only 2 schools and districts in Pennsylvania who received it was, I believe, Allentown and Mr. Zohorchek. What was the other one? That was
Lehigh Valley did a collaboration. I think it was Reading and Allentown, and then the other one was Pittsburgh Public.
So, Mr. Harley, we don't know if we can get it. We would at least like to get permission to start writing on it, and then if we can have further conversations with other school districts, maybe to help make it a cohort, we'll see. But at this point, we'd like at least permission to start going after it, sir. And community school models are pretty impactful, and what they do is they bring in community school navigators to help connect really the town and the services they have with the school district and help eliminate barriers. We would again show you the proposal before we submit it, but at least before we even start, we want to know there's permission. And Mr. Harley, before you respond, I'll turn it over to you. I think Ms. Cinda.
Yeah. Is there any way I can see, Mike, the hands that are being raised?
If you go to the participants, when a hand's raised, it'll show in the top category under participants. Now, Ms. Cinda's hand's not there now, but it was, and I believe it was.
Yes, it was. So is there a possibility that we could go in as a group with, I don't know, Blairsville, Salzburg, Homer Center, make it even other schools, Marion Center, try to make it more of the county schools and make it a county cohort?
Yeah, I think we most definitely could try applying. Now, I don't look at the grant its entirety. Justin and I just skimmed it, but I don't see why we couldn't. If Allentown and Lehigh Valley did, I don't see why we could not do that. Maybe what we could do, the best avenue is to, I meet with the supers every Tuesday and Thursday, see what their interest is, or maybe the IU sometimes can facilitate these grants, and we'll see how they want to go about it. But if the boards or the committee's open to that, then I can definitely pursue that. Justin, any comments on that from your purview?
No, and Cinda, you're right. They actually do encourage collaboration. So it is a smart move to reach out to some other places, whether it be the entire county or even just one other school district. They also look for collaboration with community agencies. So that's another thing that we're going to look into, maybe partnering up with like IRMC, So they do encourage collaboration for sure.
Okay. Thank you.
Mike, I don't hear. Are there any objections from the committee to allow them to move ahead? I don't hear anything, Mike. I certainly would encourage you to do your best.
Yes, sir. And to Miss Cinda's point, she's spot on. When you include some of the demographics of the other school districts and some of the challenges we all face, or especially they face, it would help make our grant more appealing. If the feds knew they were, impacting the entire county, maybe compared to 1 or 2 schools. So I'll add that to the agenda next week to get permission as well to formalize it. Okay, sir?
Yes, sir. Okay.
All right.
Very good. Number 3.
Next, what we have, number 3, Ben Franklin Elementary. I met with an incredible teacher, Mr. Moran and Miss Urbani, and they have really a cool idea going on at Ben Franklin. And I thought it was time to bring it forward to the board and say, look, let's make sure the board's comfortable with this. Let's see if we can support them, because I think it can have a nice benefit to our kids, especially if we're starting school on August 30th. I think there could be a nice return on investment for our kids. And Mr. Moran's doing an incredible job really building something beautiful out there for our kids. And with that said, I'd like to turn over to Mr. Urbani and Mr. Moran, and they'll go through what they're looking at trying to do. And we have some time, but I'd like to bring it here first because I think there's some academic benefit. And if need be, we can always take it to building grounds. But I think once you see what they're looking at and trying to do, it's quite remarkable. If you're okay with it, Mr. Harley, may I turn it over to?
Absolutely. Yeah, I was trying to pull it up here. So yes, go ahead.
All right, Mr. Urbani and Mr. Moran.
Thank you, Mr. Vukovic. Do I need to present on my end?
Yeah, just if you could just go to present your end, if that's okay.
Okay, sure. I think I'm slow over here. I'm sorry.
That's okay. And Kelly, if it doesn't work, let me know. I can always try.
Okay. And I'm going to do a window, right?
Yep, you could do a window or a tab.
Okay.
You probably have it up as a tab. I'd probably try tab.
Got it. Okay. Mr. Hurley, I just want to say thank you to the academic committee, to Mr. Vukovic, and to Mr. Trout for talking with us over the past couple of weeks also. And I also want to thank Mr. Moran for being here this evening to talk through this with us. So the concept for an outdoor classroom learning space began to take shape really this past fall. We had to rethink our teaching and learning practices due to the return to school in a pandemic. We didn't even know what a mask break was until this past fall. And so teachers were going outside with their classes during the day, and it really just seemed like the safest option while maintaining the social distancing to take the mask breaks. When it was still pretty warm out, it was tough for our little ones to transition back into the hot classrooms for their lessons. And so that's when we got an idea for the Ben Franklin Outdoor Classroom. And first grade teacher, Mr. Moran, did request permission to bring some logs in for students to sit upon. And Mr. Trout delivered some playground mulch to the area. And we refer to it as the courtyard. I'll show you some other pictures so you have a better understanding of where it's located. Other teachers started to get excited and sharing ideas and, wish for a whiteboard to draw and write upon for short lessons, or a ledge to hold their books when they were sharing their stories outside. And so from there, Mr. Moran and I, we started having some little conversations in the hallway before school. And we started to conceptualize an outdoor learning space where students and teachers could go throughout the day. And the next few slides are going to highlight some of our ideas for the outdoor learning space. So kind of breaking it up into sections, and it's in between the two wings, the two front wings. So section 1, we were thinking would be like a welcome area, and it's right here. That's where you would bring your class outside and you would set up the expectations for outdoor learning. Just like we have our hero expectations for inside the building, we would have hero expectations for outside of the building. Over here in section 2, we have a gatherings place, which we have right now. There's just stumps of logs that the children can sit on while they're listening to a story or practicing some math facts. And it would just be an area where you would have your class gathered, and they're 6 feet apart right now. I hope that we don't have to stay 6 feet apart, but if we do, we have the space for it. we called section 3 the food court. We're actually in the process of getting it's free of charge, but those big spools that cables come on, we can turn those into some tables. May not be for eating, but maybe for a special treat. Kids could go outside, but we could definitely do some science experiments at some tables out there. And then this is long term, but we would love to have some gardens. That would be section 4 on the opposite wing, the middle wing. And we'd love to be able to grow some plants and flowers and some raised garden beds. The items grown would align directly to concepts being taught in CKLA and science. So we were thinking, this is kind of what it looks like now. And here's a picture of the mulch that was delivered. So, and it just kind of gave it a space. And, you know, we're thinking, okay, we can do this. It's not going to be a lot of money. It's you know, it's just some space. But then we had somebody come forward with an amazing donation. And Mr. Moran, he has so many wonderful community connections. I'm sure he's going to tell you a little bit about the fact that he went to school here. And so, Mr. Moran, why don't you go ahead and talk a little bit about this connection that you made?
Thank you. Yes, I'm a townie, so I've been here all my life. I was a Ben Franklin grad many years back. And so, Mr. Urbani knows I'm a dreamer. I'm a production guy. So, you know, I just love thinking big. So, and in this thought, we were thinking, let's think of how can we make it like a big entrance, or like when you see it, like it's like, wow, it gives you a wow factor. So we were thinking, well, it'd be cool to like, could we do an arch or something? We're just kind of thinking off the top of our heads. And I started to think, I'm surrounded by a lot of woods. I have a friend that has 100 acres. I said, what about if we got a couple logs? And like, so we were thinking like that. And then I was talking to a teacher and she's like, well, Laura Lansbury, her stepfather does chainsaw art. And I was like, oh, really? Okay. So short stories, we started talking and I was connected with him. Originally, we were thinking, oh, his name is Dave Champion. And we first were thinking maybe we'll, you know, cut a log in half and make 2 like nice little, you know, chainsaw arts, art on the sides. And then in talking with him and some of the things he's done, I just in the back of my mind thought, let's go big, you know, let's see what else he could maybe do. So I proposed this idea to him. He said he has some grandkids that are on the way to Ben Franklin or currently in Ben Franklin. And so he goes, okay. And he said, wow, I would love to help out. And so talked with him about this idea. And not about a week later, he comes back with this artwork saying, well, first he asked me, what are some of the characters that you have in the school? And gave him some of the ideas that we have. And he came back with this sketch and it's like, I could do something like this. And I'm like thinking like, wow, okay, that would be great. So then I went back to Mrs. Urbani saying, we might have the means to do this. This would be pretty cool. This is getting really big. We better, you know, we better secure, you know, go through the chain and see if we can do this, or is this just a dream for us? So that's what brings us here, that, you know, hopefully we're getting closer to that dream. So.
And so again, just to, you know, we're just trying to sketch things out, but that's kind of what we were thinking it'd be right in the middle of the 2 wings. And then we did a little budget, and these are estimated. We're not sure, but there's an opportunity for me to write a grant through Lowe's that would give us some funding. And we also have a wonderful gentleman. He every month sends a donation to Ben Franklin. He lives in Ohio and he went to school here. I reached out to him just to kind of, you know, learn a little bit more about him and why he was sending us these monthly donations. And he said that the teachers and staff and the principal at Ben Franklin, when he went to school here, were so wonderful. He said he was a little boy that was very active, got in a lot of trouble, And Ben Franklin treated him with such kindness and grace and helped him along the path that he just has wanted to support us. And so about a year ago, he's been sending us monthly donations. And so we're kind of setting that aside in our donation fund. And I've said, you know, if there's anything that we can buy that would just help us remember him and how he's giving back to our school, I think that that would be a pretty neat thing to do. And so we're looking at maybe $2,500, but again, I would try to find some grants that I could write. We'll use some donations. It's not an awful lot, but obviously the installation of the log arch is going to maybe be something that we would need permission to do. So that's really why we're coming to you, because it got a little bit bigger than I think that we had originally intended. If you would like to learn more, there's a great site, Green Schoolyards America, the National COVID-19 Outdoor Learning Initiative, and they're really working with education stakeholders to consider some additional options for safely teaching and learning, and some of it's occurring outside. So there's just a great site. If you want to check that out, you're welcome to. And Mr. Moran and I just really want to thank you for your time and consideration regarding an outdoor classroom. It's something, like he said, we're both dreamers. We dream big. We may be dreaming a little bit too big for our britches, but if you have any questions, I'm happy to help answer anything that you may be wondering.
So with that said, Mr. Harley, we'll turn it back to you, see if there's any questions from the committee, and then decide if the board would like to entertain that, support this, or see if the committee would like to support this, and we can bring it forward to the entire board at next week's meeting. But Mr. Harley, I'll turn it over to you, sir.
Does the committee have anything to go to say? Tammy, Cameron?
I love this idea. I just wish we could, I wish there was a way to do it to all the schools, the elementary, junior high. I mean, just getting them outdoors, and it would also help with ADHD and, you know, and attention problems. And yeah, I think it's a wonderful idea.
I agree. Thank you, Mr. Moran and Ms. Urbani, for dreaming big and bringing this to us. I think it's a fantastic idea, and I do wish we could do it everywhere. And maybe this will be the beginning to having one at all of our buildings. So I fully support it.
Mike, if we could build a classroom for $2,500, we should build 7 of them. So that's pretty impressive. I would like to caution you that we would need to make it accessible. So where you show pea gravel, you probably need sidewalks to make sure that the handicapped kids can make it there too. I also like
consider that maybe for our playgrounds too, then, Mr. Hurley.
I understand,
Yeah,
but
that'd be great.
we can do bits and pieces as we go along.
Okay,
But,
wonderful.
The other thing is that that notch between those 2 classroom wings is grossly underutilized.
Yeah.
It
And
is.
this would be very, very nice to have something there. And it also could grow. So you could start out with, $2,500 and add to it every year. And it also, this is something easy for the community garden people to get behind, for the evergreen people to get behind. And it could really make it a community event. So I would certainly support this. I think your numbers are too low in doing it. But it's amazing what you can do with $2,500 and 2,000 hours worth of work. And it's going to evolve as you go along. So, as you use it and find out how to make it, how to have 2 classes out there at the same time, you're going to have a problem in scheduling it at some point. So that's great.
Sure.
That's great. So
If you know of any architects that want to lend a hand, give us a call.
no, I'll see if I can find one.
Okay,
But we actually have a woman by the name of Barb Haig here that has done 2 of these.
Wonderful.
Districts. We have somebody around that could probably pressure treat the logs. We won't mention his name, but the community starts pitching in, and it's amazing how far you can multiply this $2,100.
It really is. And like I said, that's just an estimate. Obviously, if I'm able to secure any grant funding, we'll have to get that approved as well.
And I understand that, Kelly. What my concern with the grant funding is that you're going to spend 6 months getting the grant funding, and it's going to be $300. So what I would like to see is that we start that so that we have something there for fall. And then the grant funding comes in, and grants are really good about piling on to successful projects. So you write $500 grants for the cables or something like that, and off you go. So I would like to see this as part of our budget for this year, and get it moving. And so that would be certainly my recommendation. Tamara, do you have any objection to that? Okay, Mike, why don't you make that a motion to the board? That we do this?
You have two hands raised, Mr. President's hand and.
He just wants to talk. Go ahead, Walter.
Yeah, I get tired of listening to myself talk half the time anyway. You made a comment that you think the prices are too low. I absolutely can assure you that unless they have gotten the prices for the building materials in the last 7 days, they probably should go back to Lowe's or Arone or Lezer or any of the other building supply houses in town. There is a tremendous shortage of this material, especially the lumber that I'm aware of. And, when you bring it to the board, I want to make sure that your numbers are accurate, even if the $2,500 figure isn't enough. Would like to do this kind of as a one-time deal, so you may want to double check your numbers there, Kelly.
And that I understand it. We were not asking the board for any money, so I'm happy to go back and take another look, and I appreciate that.
It was a very conservative estimate, very conservative.
I want you to ask the board for money so this project gets started and is actually there so we can use it in the fall.
Okay.
I don't want to spend the next 9 months trying to find $2,500.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
And Julie's probably doing double backflips right now, but for goodness sakes. Yes, sir.
Tom, I think we have Mr. Lingenfelder and Mr. Green on tonight. I think they've got a time crunch here at 6:30. Perhaps we could, juggle things around and move to that part of the agenda to make sure everything's covered there.
What agenda? What do you want to move to, Walter? What number?
Mike.
Yep. Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Harley. I'll turn it over to Mr. Heinrich. He's been working. As you know, the board previously authorized us to go down and infuse and enhance our STEM program at the grades 4 and 5 level. And Mr. Heinrich has a brief update, I believe, for the group. Mr. Heinrich?
Yeah, that's just it. I'm
sorry. Before you start, Rob, is that on the agenda somewhere? Am I missing that? I'm just trying to keep up with what we're doing.
No, if it's on there, sir, it's under non-agenda items, as it's really not we already have approval. It's just an update based on their time.
Okay.
Their time frame, sir. I apologize for that.
That's okay. Go ahead. Go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, so in the fall, the board approved the allocation of some funds to pay for the Challenger exploration programs to take place in the 4th and 5th grades. Mr. Dave Sheeran has been working very hard to get all the plans in place, and they plan to execute that this coming 9 weeks. And I just wanted to give Mr. Lingenfelder and Mr. Green the opportunity to talk about what that program will entail and what the next logical steps are. So, gentlemen, if you would.
Okay.
Rod, why don't you go ahead and start?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Yeah, again, and this is just, as we said, an update and from what was previously approved, but obviously we're looking forward to working closely with Mr. Sheeran, and just to give you an update, part of the what's called the Classroom Adventures program it's coming from the National Challenger Center. This is a online content, but a in classroom experience that will involve 3 different sessions with a simulation activity, an engineering activity, as well as a writing exercise activity. And those 3 parts are actually about 1 hour in length each. We have gone through training ourselves as the local Challenger Center provider, but we will also work with Mr. Sheeran to go through what we call maybe some test runs to have him be more familiar, because there are still local decisions that you use with this program, and we want to make sure that Mr. Sheeran has the opportunity to align anything that he sees in the classroom adventure with his current curriculum, or even to use it more of an interdisciplinary manner also. We're obviously going to start out with 2 different options here. One's called the Dirt Decoders program, and the other one's called the Nature Rangers program. And again, both of these programs utilize a student teams approach, which I know all schools are interested in doing to again, get students more familiar in working with teams, looking at collaboration, looking at those soft people skills that start at a very early age, but lead to obviously integration into the workforce later. The other thing that we're excited about giving this opportunity again is that the program offers real hands-on role playing for STEM careers. So this will very much complement some of your career education activities, and as well as could be used as an additional artifact for Chapter 339 activities. So again, we just appreciate the opportunity. We're glad that Indiana is going to take this take the option of trying this program, and again, we'll be working more closely with Mr. Sheeran as we progress in the next 9 weeks. Doug, do you want to add to that?
Rod, I think you covered it pretty well, but I would like to emphasize that there's actually 3 different classroom adventures. They're redoing the aquatic investigators, so it is the Nature Rangers and Dirt Decoders that you will be starting out with. They're actually built for 4th, 5th, and 6th graders, that you can actually set the reading level individually to students. And this is not a beta version or anything else. More than 5.5 million children have already gone through it. And the ratings are on a 1 to 5 scale. Everything has been above 4.5 and close to 5 from both teachers. And they talk about it as a teacher's program to help with the curriculum that you're currently working through, to a student program that, you know, if you've got a slower reader or something like that, that you're still going to be able to keep them engaged and involved, along with the 3 1-hour sections for each one of these programs. You can see where, as Rod mentioned, it is STEM oriented, that the engineering part and the technical writing part. So besides the simulation, of course, and they can be done at different times in the day or different times in the month. So the program itself is pretty darn flexible. We are super excited that you guys have jumped aboard, and we're really looking forward to working with all of you. So my contact information, Rob has all of that, but 814-619-6794 is my personal phone number, and you can call me anytime.
Yeah, and I thank you for that. And as Mr. Legenfelder mentioned, there are 3 portions of each of these explorations. There is a simulation that the students get to observe and watch, and then there's an engineering piece where they actually get to work as teams to critically think, you know, to diagnose a problem and problem solve that out. And then there is that ELA component where they get to write about their findings. So it is cross-curricular, it is STEM related, it is 21st century learning, it is everything that we want to build in that STEM academy. So we're very happy with this opportunity, and we look forward to the results this program is going to produce.
Does anybody have any questions?
Start with the committee and the board. Okay. Mike, I assume this was funded, that's,
Yes, sir. You approved it in the fall.
okay.
We've allocated the money and the payment is on the way.
Okay, I'd certainly like to hear how the results work on this test program. I'm very optimistic though. Good seeing you, Rod.
Good seeing all of you, and thank you again. And I will throw in one more plug. Just I know that all districts right now, obviously, you've all been dealing with the pandemic and the flexibility and remote learning and hybrid schedules, and we could go on and on. But I will say that I think the Classroom Adventures program, once we get off the ground with this, I see this as being also a great summer program, summer activity, closing a COVID gap type activity that's available for all children, and maybe not just a targeted learning type thing. So again, as we hopefully build a little credibility ourselves with this program, I really see this as being another summer option too. So again, we look forward to this opportunity, and again, I know that Mr. Sheeran is going to be a great partner in working with him.
Thank you all for your time. Sure appreciate it. Looking forward to seeing you.
Yes, and thank you, gentlemen, for all the help. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
Michael, we're back on track.
Yes, sir. I'd like to turn the floor over to Mr. Heinrich and Mr. McElhaney and his team. They're looking to make some changes at the high school, and they're going to bring them forward here, present them tonight. And a lot of it is, it falls in line with some of the state law changes that occurred, and I thought we'd give them the floor and give some time to present their cases and see if we can issue some support behind the good leadership that's happening up there. With that said, Mr. Heinrich, I'll turn it over to you and Mr. McElhaney.
Thank you, sir. In 2019, the Pennsylvania education law changed to allow personal finance to count as a math credit for certain students in certain situations. In fact, it can count as a math credit, a social studies credit, or business education or family consumer science credit for graduation. When we saw this coming down, Mr. McElhaney and his team took advantage of the opportunity. Personal finance and financial literacy is something that we value, that we want to instill in our students. And we wanted, Mr. McElhaney asked Mr. Eric Brocious and his team to go back and look at some of the curriculum and align it so that we were confident that our personal finance offering would satisfy that expectation. So I'll turn it over to those two gentlemen so that they can tell you what they found here.
Thank you, Mr. Heinrich, for that introduction with the way the laws change and is affecting our curriculum and graduation requirements here. We took a look at those options, and we felt, as you said, with financial literacy, that would be a great thing for our students to be able to focus on. And with that, Mr. Brocious already teaches Personal Finance 1, so it was a nice extension having a Personal Finance 2. We're looking at this as an offering, as a substitute for a math credit. It would be the third year because math is a successive learning experience. We figured that we'd want our students to have their math learning uninterrupted in 9th and 10th grades. And then if this would take place, this could be 11th or 12th grade option for those students. So with that, one other thing I want to say before I turn it over to Mr. Brocious, talk about some of those topics that are involved in the Personal Finance 1 and 2 curricula, is that the curriculum that you were looking at as we present to the academic committee tonight, it involves the objectives and standards. We are still working through those instructional strategies, reteaching, as well as resources, things of that nature. So as we move forward, and we will be filling in that information, but for the next board meeting, we were looking for provisional approval, providing that we get the rest of this finished, but we wanted to get it in place and ready for scheduling that occurs mid to late this month. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Brocious. Thank you, Mr. Brocious, for attending. Appreciate your expertise and experience with these courses, and go over those topics. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. So personal finance, Mr. McElhaney and I have been working diligently over the last couple of years with all of our career readiness activities going on. And so we, in one of our career readiness meetings, he had brought up the idea of offering a personal finance 2 class, and then of course that allowing students to have a 1 full year math credit. So our planning is then, what I did was I realistically, I would have loved to teach it as a full year course from the get-go. And I've been teaching personal finance for about 25 years now. So the idea right now is I'm currently teaching a personal finance 1, which we just started the new semester. And, you know, some of the concepts right now, like right now I'm going through payroll systems with the kids. We're going to jump into taxes. We'll get into budgeting. We're going to talk about checking and savings accounts from a personal side versus a business side. We're then going to get into investing. That seems to be the big draw of students into that. I come with a lot of expertise in the investment arena. And so, you know, the students, I introduce them to the stock market game in personal finance 1. We do it for about a 5-week period. And then we talk about all different facets of investing from there. I don't have a lot of time to get into some of the advanced, you know, investment strategies and things like that, but that would be something that I would look forward to doing in personal finance 2. And then we kind of wrap up with, you know, the idea of retirement and then getting into some family decision-making, like marriage, divorce, things of that nature. In personal finance 2, if you see there under the topics, one of the things I want to start off with, since it's going to be kind of fresh in the students' minds, is I want to get into some advanced methodology of investing, dealing with different types of trading activities, you know, people trading with margin, day trading, different aspects of that, dealing with bond markets, mutual funds, ETFs, just a lot of different aspects of advanced investing that I wanted to cover with students that we really don't have time to do right now. Again, the idea of that class is I'm planning on running the stock market for the entire semester. There are a couple competitions that I've looked into that are competitive in the state of Pennsylvania with their personal finance initiatives. So I have looked into those and timing on how our class is going to align with that. But if not, I can currently use the one that I'm using right now through Market Watch, which is the Wall Street Journal. We're then going to get into credit, as you can see there, in the different areas of credit, credit laws, the costs of credit, so which would be dealing with, you know, banking, credit cards, things of that nature. We're going to get into renting and buying a home, owning a vehicle, and then we're going to start getting into some risk management, dealing with, you know, property liability insurance, health insurances, and then of course our roles as consumers, consumer protection, and then how we go about dispute resolution in those particular areas. So based on how I tried to separate personal finance and personal finance 2, it should be a smooth transition. Now, I know one of the things that we are planning is that, you know, personal finance 1 will be offered first and second semester. I do get a lot of students that may want to take that elective in the spring. So I still will have that, which I do now. I teach personal finance 1 first and second semester. Sometimes I have multiple sections just because a lot of students want to take that class. So we're still planning on that, depending on how, you know, my schedule and the art department works out. And then again, for those students looking for the personal finance 2 for math credit, we would continue on with personal finance 2 into that second semester. Personal finance 2 would only be offered second semester. Okay. Does anybody have any questions about those 2 courses?
Tammy, board have anything?
Mr. Harley, we had Madam Vice President, was your hand up? I'm sorry, I thought I saw it up. I may have made a mistake. I apologize.
It was, but I get mixed up on how to use the button.
You're okay.
Just a comment. I mean, I think the personal finance is a great thing that you've done, Mr. Brocious, and that the school supported. In light of what's happened in the credit card industry and some of the news that's been just the late news, I would consider moving the credit card information and how the interest works and what the new terms are that they've rolled out. I would consider getting that out to them in the personal finance 1, because it does impact their future, understanding how they're going to calculate that interest. And I think sometimes the way the nuances can be important to them going forward, because so many of them go out the door when they're seniors and they buy a car. And then the next thing, they have all this debt, and they didn't quite understand the components of how that interest would work. So, but sounds very good. Thank you.
Mr. Kerr, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I guess I was wondering, and maybe you said it, Mr. Brocious, is you get into wills and power of attorney and
We do. So in Personal Finance 1, that's one of the sections towards the end of the first, towards the end of that course, since it's a semesterly course. So once we finish up the investing section, I do go into retirement, which we talk about wills, power of attorneys, estates, things of that nature. And then, you know, how people can set those up and how they're designed. So we do go over that in the retirement section of that class in Personal Finance 1.
Okay, thanks. It's all great practical information for our kids.
They're all going to want to know in Finance 1 how you short sell.
I get those questions every day. Right now, I mean, the last few years have been an exciting time for the market. It's amazing, Julia, that how many students that I have that are currently on Robinhood as high school students. They come to me in study hall. They stop me in the hallway. I have kids email me all the time. You know, and my one rule for my kids is that you never invest more than you can afford to lose. And that is something I talk about from day one. And it's funny where I have students that are investing $25 that they got from mowing grass, and they are putting that into Robinhood accounts. And really the market's been so good that it's almost difficult to lose money. I mean, not that you can't, but it is difficult today. And really, I've had some students that have been very successful making very good money for high school kids.
That's wonderful. Except Robinhood better watch. They got a little trouble.
Yep, we talk about that.
That's exciting though. I'm sure that'll be very popular to find out more about that.
Yep.
That's great. The one fellow that was involved, the kid that went from $4,000, well, he's not a kid, but the young man who went from $4,000 to something like $64,000. He said, I'm just a public high school student. He said, I didn't go to college. I thought it was great. But I don't know what's happened to him in the interim, but he was pretty happy with himself. So.
Well, that's one of the things that I want to get into in the personal finance too. If you notice where I listed advanced methods in investing in markets, I want to get into a little bit more detail on, you know, the idea of margin purchasing, short selling, things of that nature, just so kids are educated on it and they don't just see something in the news and decide they're going to try it and then they realize they lost $1,000 that they don't have. So it's also going to be about responsible investing as well, because I'm a firm believer in that. So. Okay.
There should be ethics codes involved, and there is.
Yes.
So, well, thank you very much.
Sure. You're welcome. Thank you.
Mr. Harley,
I'm sorry, whose hands up?
no one. That's all of them, sir.
Okay. Julie and Terry still have their hands up. Eric,
I lowered my hand.
It's up now. There you
Now
go.
it says, thank you.
Eric, my oldest daughter was talking about this and talking about the importance of finance, personal finance, and how little she's used her calculus and how a lot she's used her personal finance skills over the last couple of years. So I'm anxious to see how well this works for us.
Like I said, I'm hoping that it fills in well for those students, you know, and again, not trying to take away anything from our great math teachers and what we offer in our math department. I just think it's another offering for kids to give them ability to maybe focus in an area that they necessarily may not have room in their schedules for. And now they're going to get a math credit for it. And again, we do quite a bit of math throughout that class. So
I hope so.
Do you have to take both?
For the math credit, I do believe
for the math credit.
For the math credit, yes.
Yes,
but
ma'am.
for the elective credit, you do not have to take both.
Okay. Okay. So, okay. Got it. All right. So, and that's why you're saying you've worked out the scheduling so that.
Exactly. Yes.
Got it. Thank you.
Mike, I think we can move this onto the board. Can we move on to C?
Yep.
Yes, sir.
Mr.
So, yeah, sorry, Mr. Vukovic. So, yeah, we're basically asking for 3 changes to our graduation requirements tonight. One would be the adoption or the allowance of the personal finance 2 curriculum, and for that to allow for replace a math credit in certain situations. And again, this isn't for all kids. This is just for certain kids in certain situations where it's more apropos. The next change we want to propose is we want to reduce the requirements for HPE, currently set at 2 full credits, to 1.5 credits. Essentially, that would make HPE in grades 9, 10, and 11 mandatory classes that all kids would have to take, and grade 12, where it would become an elective. Mr. McElhaney, did you say something? No? Okay.
No, we didn't say anything yet.
Okay, yeah. So what this will allow is it's going to allow us a couple things. Number one, the state requires only 1 credit of HPE. And our school goes with, our district requires 2 at this point. And in 9th, 10th, and 11th grade, we have health components built into our HPE class. And in 12th grade, it's just the gym component. So we would still have that gym component as an elective for certain kids, but for kids where that didn't fit their schedule or their interests, they would then have half of the year freed up to take different electives. One of those electives could be driver's education. As you know, our driver's education teacher is retiring, and the board would be posed with the question of, do we want to continue to provide driver's education? Well, by reducing this credit, by reducing the requirement by half a credit, that's going to allow us in the schedule to free up one of our HPE teachers who has that certification, so we can still provide that service to our kids and do so in a fiscally responsible manner, without really taking anything away from kids. Kids that still want gym would have that opportunity to take it 4 years. The students who do not wouldn't have to. It's going to make more flexibility for certain students who want to, like students that are going to CTC would have more flexibility in their schedule to take classes other than HPE. Students who, we have a lot of students who take HPE in the summer to free up spaces in their schedule for the fall, so they can take AP courses. And they take gym in the summer so they can, or HP in the summer, so they can take the AP physics in the fall, or whatever it might be. So it provides us a little flexibility, more choice for our kids, and we still think it provides the same level of service. Mr. McElhaney, you want to elaborate on any of that?
Yeah, I can elaborate on some of that. Taking a look at and providing student options are important for us. We do value the HPE that is provided. We do have a good number of students who do take PE in 12th grade. They take a lot of the electives. We have yoga classes, we have personal fitness, which are lifelong types of things. So those opportunities would still be available for those students. I was working with the phys ed department today, particularly the individual who has the certification in driver's ed. We're going to do a deep dive in looking into what Mr. Sokol has been able to offer our students and being able to work that into the schedule and see what that looks like. So we'll come back with the results of that deep dive of scheduling.
And again, so what we're asking for would reduce our HPE requirements from 2 credits to 1.5. All of the health curriculum would still be delivered to all students. The HPE would be required for students grade 9, 10, and 11. Grade 12 would become an elective would fill their elective an elective requirement for their graduation. However, it would not be mandatory that the 12th graders take HPE, and that would free up our schedule. So that will be one of the changes that we're asking for. I don't know, Mr. Harley, if you want to have a conversation about that, or do you want to?
Yeah, a couple questions, Rob. What is a 1.5 HPE credit look like? How much of that is H and how much of that's PE?
Well, if my understanding is correct, about in 9th, 10th, and 11th grade, it's about half and half. It's pretty split down the middle. They spend as much time, if not more, talking about the health component of it as they do getting the exercise in the gym classes and putting that theory into practice. But 12th grade is all PE. It's all the practice part. So it might be, and like Mr. McElhaney pointed out, there's specific types of HP elective courses you could take, but
what are we doing? What do we do for 2 credits in HPE currently?
We require one of those PE classes their 12th grade. So if like you take the health and phys ed 9, 10, 11, and in 12th grade, you have to take either yoga or,
Okay, so
or one of
we're
the
not
other.
reducing, I misunderstood that. We're not reducing the requirement to 1.5 credits per year.
No,
It's 1.5 credits total. So
throughout 4 years.
So we're dropping a half a credit out of grade 12.
That's correct, sir.
Okay. Okay. So they basically will get in 9, 10, 11 the same HPE that they're getting today.
That's correct. And it would be above and beyond what the state requires. So we're still exceeding the state requirements and allowing our students more flexibility.
Okay. Great. Great. Does the committee or board have any comments on this? I'd also like to point out that over half of our high school kids are playing some kind of varsity sport. So we have a lot of kids that are getting a lot of exercise in the grade 12 elective. I think gives them a lot more flexibility. So Mike, I think you can bring this to the board. Okay, moving on to D.
Yep, Mr. Howard.
Yes, sir. So we also had the.
Hold on. I see water hand Schroth's up.
Oh, go ahead, Mr. Schroth.
Walter?
You may be muted, sir.
Yes, Tom, it is.
Okay.
You know, I really, can you hear me now? No, I really wanted to give the committee a chance to respond to this, but I really kind of support this. I think most of our seniors, by the time they get to be seniors, are starting to kind of move on already, at least mentally. And, you know, it's still a, you know, requirement for all of the other grades, and cutting a senior some slack to either work or ICTC or dual enrollment or those sort of things, I think really, you know, is something that we often talk about, unfettering our students to allow them to kind of spread their wings. And I think this would certainly assist those in moving on into their futures.
Great. I think we can move on to C now. I don't see any other hands. Mike, do you?
No, sir.
Let's go.
And D.
Yes, sir. Thank you. We also had the recent retirement of 2 of our chemistry teachers in the same year.
Walter put his hand back up.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Walter? Walter, your hand's up. Okay, you took it down. Go ahead, Rob.
It's called technically challenged.
Yeah.
It's called challenged. I tried to take it down, but pushed it back up again. Sorry.
No worries. So with the retirement of 2 chemistry teachers this year, we're presented with a problem and an opportunity, I guess is the best way to describe it. So outstanding chemistry teachers are difficult to find. The certification is not abundant across teachers in the Commonwealth. And then to find really good ones is even more rare. So, you know, this problem, though, could be present an opportunity here. If the board were to approve the substitution of a technology education class, such as the science of engineering or computer-aided drafting and design, to replace the chemistry requirement, again, for certain students who would be advised by our guidance counselors to make the right choice of courses to match their career choices or future plans, then we would have the flexibility in the schedule to hire 1 chemistry teacher and a biology teacher, which is going to give us a lot more flexibility. All of our students take environmental science, which causes a considerate burden on the scheduling as far as allocation of we love environmental science. It's not a burden to teach it, but it does eat up a lot of our slots available for teachers to teach, so to speak. What we're asking to do is take the chemistry requirement and put the technology education class in as an option to replace that for certain students, which will allow us to widen our search for our science teachers that we're going to replace. to let us hire the two best candidates who are going to be able to satisfy the needs of our students and our priorities, which are preparing kids for what's coming next and our tested subjects, which is biology. Mr. McLean, please elaborate on that.
Yeah, if I could add something to that. If you look at our the way in which our current chemistry teachers' assignments are allocated, environmental science is right now within the chemistry department, and there are 7 sections of it, and 7 sections of environmental science constitute one teaching position. So if we could focus the chemistry on 2 existing instructors, we believe that we can meet the needs or enrollment needs there. And then also, if we can focus the environmental science with a biology / perhaps another certification teacher, we feel that those students will be best served with someone with that background. Our chemistry teachers do a wonderful job already with environmental science, but if we can focus student learning with someone with a biology / another science background, we think those students would be better helped with environmental science.
So again, we think that this is the right move for our kids. And again, this, we're just trying to maximize our flexibility and potential with this situation that's presented to us.
And if I could also add and make a comment about that substitution credit. Students, we believe strongly in their science education. We know that's about problem solving. We know that's about hands-on learning. And with technology education, we feel we can provide the hands-on type of problem solving that goes with technology education. And that would be science and engineering and computer-aided drafting. In both of those subjects, there is design and there is test. There's hypotheses, there are scientific learning, so to speak. So we feel that it's an apt substitute. The students, however, will still have the opportunity to take chemistry. We're just trying to provide those students in their junior year, possibly senior year, an opportunity to earn a science credit or through the technology education learning.
Wade, is science of engineering and computer-aided drafting design, is that 2 classes?
Science of engineering is a semester-long course, and the CAD is also a semester-long course.
And we would still offer chemistry and AP chemistry?
Yes.
But you'd only have one faculty member teaching that?
No, you would have 2. We have one. We have one chemistry teacher who. We have 3 total. 2 are retiring, so we have 1, and then we'd hire 1. That gives us 2. So the chemistry offering would be the same. We would just allow some students to take this science of engineering class. Right. And part of that thought process also is that if they do become very interested in the engineering, then taking chemistry during the senior year could be an opportunity for them as well. One of the things that we liked about the chemistry teachers we had was their rigor. Would that kind of rigor still be showing up in science of engineering? In science of engineering, I believe that rigor would be evident for those students taking those courses. Does the board have any comments? Any hands up, Mike?
No, sir, there are not.
Okay. Wait, I think you can bring this forward, Mike.
Yes, sir.
All these forward. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Harley, that concludes all the items that will be on the agenda based on tonight's discussion. What I would like to do next, if it's okay with you, is take items of non-agenda items 1 and 2 somewhat together. We'll talk about number 1, see what discussions are, then we'll go to number 2, but they're both off the presentation, if that's okay with you, sir.
Absolutely.
So give me 1 minute while I share my screen. So the first thing we want to talk about is our idea of summer acceleration academies, and just want to spend some time talking about trying to explain the why behind this, why we think this is important. The one thing that I want to come out the gate with saying is the funds to pay for this would come out of the federal funds that we receive for items such as this, the $1.75 million we received. So what we'd like the board to know up front is, look, yes, there's a need, but we could pay through those federal funds we received, would not come out of our general fund. However, I have to reiterate, we don't know what's going to happen with the state budget, and you don't know if they're going to try to eliminate some of our allocations based on that amount or not. But if you ask us or ask me, these summer acceleration academies are a step in the right direction for those kids who want to attend. And I know there may be some burnout. I know there may be some people tired with the year, the way it's been as far as stressful and coming to school. But we think we need to have a responsibility. In fact, we think it's a fiduciary responsibility to step in and have some discussion about what we could do to assist those kids in needs. Now, the big question that may come up is why, Mike? Why are you coming with us with this request and this proposal? And we think it would argue there's 4 reasons we're going to go through, but they really revolve around 2 big ideas. We're going to argue that we think the COVID gap is about to explode, right? That that achievement gap that people talk about is only going to worsen as a result of the pandemic. And we really think that we have to address equity. If equity is going to be at the heart of what we do as far as our comprehensive planning and our leadership style, then this is a call to action. And it's also aligned with the board's vision of getting every kid to read by level of 4th grade. 2 things we would like to call out, though, just 2 little data points and talking points. Throughout the 2021 school year, over 200 students in K through 5 have been quarantined. It has switched platforms, which causes obvious disruptions in learning. Yeah, but understand this, the quarantines can be longer if the person in the household is positive. And there's also many more absences due to minor illnesses due to the risk of those symptoms being COVID-19 like. Now, that's no one's fault. We asked our parents to keep their kids home if they were feeling sick, if they were ill, and they listened to us. So it's no one's fault. All I'm saying is kids miss school, and I'd like to have an honest conversation with the board about what we could do to fill in those gaps and have a conversation what that looks like and if you're comfortable with it. East Pike, as you know, they were shut down for a total of 12 days, which is 6 more days than the entire district due to their outbreak that they had. And we've been fortunate. Only one building had to close a long time. If you look at the PDE's website today, we're back in the moderate status. So things are heading in the right trend, but there's still going to be a gap, an opportunity gap that we have to address as a board. And here's the 4 reasons why I come out and say why I think we should do this. Number 1, McKinsey & Company came out with an article that showed that kids can wind up, underprivileged kids can wind up anywhere from 9 to 10 months behind. If all means all, and that's what we talk about as a board, then I think we have a responsibility to act. You may be saying, look, that's not Indiana, that's not us, that we don't have those type of demographics. We do. Indiana about a decade ago was about 10% free and reduced lunch. Now it's near 50, in some cases mid-50s. So there's a need, and that's not saying it's a bad thing. It's saying it's a call to action, in my opinion. But you also have to bear in mind that these losses that a lot of people talk about in achievement, they pre-existed for the pandemic. I think they're only going to worsen. And I think when we look at our data, we have a call to action here that we have to respond to and act upon. And it's not pointing fingers. The last thing I want to do is get emotions rise with all the people on the call too, saying that people's not doing their job. That's not at all. You can't account for time, and we have to figure that out. And they're going to need time, but not only time, quality time. And then next one, sir, in my opinion, either we prepare kids now or we're going to spend more money preparing them later. So either we pay now or we pay later. Before the pandemic, McKinsey estimated that the gap between students from high income to low income families will cost taxpayers between $400 to $607 billion. And again, that was before the pandemic. So I think we have a sense of urgency here to get our kids in our school and make sure they're provided quality time and quality support. And I think that matters. If you're asking who does it, what does it look like, to who, what, when, where, and why, we're saying right now let's open it all grades in K to 5. Priorities given to at-risk students, which is identified by data and teacher recommendations. However, we're not going to have any restrictions, though. If we can fit all kids in who want to attend, we want to bring them in, because there's no reason we can't accelerate our high flyers and keep them going, as well as help the kids who may be in need. The last thing I want to do is make this a punitive or a nasty thing that the kids losing their summer. So we'll talk more about that in a minute, but we want to step in. We want to provide intervention. We're looking at 2 academies, one in June, one in August. Math and reading are going to be the areas of focus. Each academy would be 3 weeks in length. June 7th would be start date of one. August 2nd would start the other one. We're going to go Monday through Thursday, and we're going to do 4 hours a day. And looking at where we are thinking about the junior high, because we think it's a central location, and besides it has air conditioning, and it's also allowed Greg and his team to get the buildings ready. We're going to provide busing if the board's supportive of that, and also breakfast and lunch, because we want to make sure they come there fed, because we talk about the social emotional needs and eliminating barriers. Busing is a barrier, and maybe them not being fed could be another barrier. So we want to make sure they're ready to go, and then we're going to hit the academic sides. Our recipe for success, what does it look like? It's going to be data driven, right? It's going to be needs based. It's not going to be a one size fits all cookie cutter approach. Teachers are going to have to look at the data, look at the kids' strengths and weaknesses, and develop an individual plan for each and every child using our district approved curriculum and resources. We also value small student teacher ratio in the summer because of our goal of really looking at a tier 2 and tier 3 intervention. We need a smaller sizes so the teachers can plan accordingly. We're also going to include the IEP speech and language department. They're going to come in June, provide some ongoing additional support similar to what they're doing now. The one barrier we're going to have is they're not available in August, and we're going to overcome that and see what we can do internally. And then lastly, we are going to reach out to look at community partnerships and make this fun. I want to be a collaborator, not a competitor. If kids have to pick going swimming at Mac Park or going to our summer acceleration academies, I think they're going to pick Mac Park. So what we're doing is have an early conversation, and if the board's supportive, we'll continue to have those conversations with the YMCA and other providers to see what we can do to make sure it's fun, that kids come there. Yes, they get their education, but they also have some fun, because this has to be a fun time for them as well. We think we can do that. I wish I had more detail, but we just started building this. And right now, as we go through this, I'm asking, are you interested? Can I further, develop this and make sure we do something to meet the moment for our kids? Because we think it's imperative. We think there's a slide, and we think we have a call to action here to step in. If you look at the roles and responsibilities, again, teachers are going to provide core instruction. Our camp counselors will provide support and supervision of students during breakfast, lunch, and games. Teachers are going to plan accordingly. They're going to run our play like they have all year. They're going to use data-driven instruction. We're going to make sure they have 20 minutes in the morning while the kids are at breakfast to plan and prep, and they're going to administer pre and post exams. We have to make sure we're accountable to ourselves and to our students to make sure they got better as a result of our teaching. And we're going to look at testing them before and after, and we're going to maintain communication with families so they know that the hard work that teachers are doing is paying off, and we're going to use our tools. The daily structure, that's something that we're still playing with and looking at, but that's something we came up with as a daily structure. And again, it's fluid and it can't change depending on what we do with our community partnerships. Our goal is targeting 200 kids in K-5. Last year, we got 100 kids in K-3, so we set a target of 200 to see if we can meet that. And again, we'd love to far exceed that, but we don't know what type of interest we're going to have. We're looking at providing 60 hours and more of intervention acceleration for each kid, but it comes at a cost, right? A total bill right now, we're looking at about $180,000. What I'm going to ask the board to do is authorize me to spend up to $250,000, understanding that we may not even come close to that, but in case something changes, I lose staff, or some other variable I can't account for comes up, at least I had authorization to adapt and plan accordingly. I don't need, if you don't want to approve it on Monday, you need some more time to think about, that's fine, but I just kind of need a direction from the board, because it's going to take me a lot of time and the administrators planning this with all these other outside agencies. And, step one, hopefully we get support from the academic committee. Step two, we got to survey our staff to see if we have enough staff interested in serving that. And then step three, we got to start talking to our families and seeing what their thoughts are to see if they're interested. But we think this puts us in a position to be successful. We're going to have some pairs and/or camp counselors, some money from the IEP speech partnership, money for supplies, and then you're looking at about $30,000 in busing for IEP or for the students. Now, with that said, Mr. Hurley, it may look a little different, meaning that we may bus kids from the camp at YMCA to the school and back to the camp. We don't know all those details yet as we're building this in flight, and we only met with the Y on Friday, but we think this makes sense, and we think this can go a long way to helping kids and helping closing and erasing that gap. I mean, we think this, again, is a call to action on our part. If you ask me what the next steps were before we turn over to questions, hopefully we can get tentative approval tonight from the academic committee, issuing their support. If not, we can keep working at it, or we can stop the conversation, whatever the board so chooses. And then we'd like to survey our staff and families to see if we have enough staff to work. And if not, then we can look at some of our long-term subs and other people who've really done an incredible job. Then we're hopefully asking for board ratification to authorize the summer program to occur and not to exceed $250,000. Then we begin the process of posting and hiring the positions, and then we'll run the play. And that's pretty straightforward how we would operate as a district. The one thing I would like to do, though, Mr. Harley, is allow the committee and the board to ask any questions. We have our FTSS facilitators on the call. We have our principals on the call, and we can have, hopefully have a conversation. But we understand and recognize that the request we're asking for is high. But we think if we're really going to achieve and try to close this gap that occurred from the COVID slide, then this is how we want to move forward. And I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Harlan.
Okay. I see Terry has her hand up. You want to start, Terry?
Sure. I think, definitely I'm in favor of this. I think you did a good job outlining a plan here. 2 comments. One is, would there anything be wrong with taking the word acceleration out of this? When people hear that, whether it's a person at work or a student, that may scare them away from it. It's just a term or a word that maybe just puts some fear into the student that's not needed.
Yeah, we could definitely do that. We could definitely come up with a new name. Absolutely, sir. That's not a big deal at all.
Yep. Second comment, your second 3-week shift starts August 2nd, I think it was there. Is there any chance to debate or consider moving that back into July a week or 2? And the reason is, I think it's important for these students to have as long a break as possible between the end of that 3-week period and the starting back in school.
We can definitely look at that, sir. What we were trying to do is give everyone off in July vacation because we didn't know about families, but that's something we can definitely look at, sir. Absolutely.
Mike, I think it was the Harrisburg paper late last week. I think I read that they said that, well, there's just no guarantee about what these school districts are going to receive. So our allotment is supposed to be, what did you say, from the
nearly $1.8 million. It's 1.76, Madam Vice President.
So even if they cut 75% of it, you've got enough.
Yes, ma'am. What I would say, Madam Vice President, with all respect, is that we only spend that money for this camp and then hold on to everything else, because in case Harrisburg comes through with a budget cut or something else of that nature, I don't want to, spend the money too quickly, but
Right.
that is a concern in reality.
Yeah, I totally support this. So I want to see this happen. And regardless, we're going to have to figure out how to pay for it. If we get the money, if it works out as according to plan, that's even better with how you've set it up. But there's no question in my mind that this is probably the most important year for a summer program that we've ever had, because there's just been a lot of commotion during the year. So this gives students an opportunity to come have fun and learn. I wasn't quite sure how were you going to, I think you said you were going to put it all in the junior high. Is that correct?
We were thinking about that. Yes, Madam Vice President, that's correct.
Okay, and you've looked at partnerships with YMCA and whatnot for more fun and things to do so that you could coordinate your activities. So it's 4 hours a day. Would that be in the morning or the afternoon, or would you run two separate schedules?
We'll just go in the morning, ma'am. Probably around 8 o'clock, 8:30 to, 12, 1 o'clock, somewhere around there. So it'll be in the morning. Yes, ma'am.
But to tell you the truth, I'd almost like to see this as a permanent program that we start every year. Because I do think that in some ways the regular school schedule that we've all been used to for decades is just not going to meet the needs of the future post-pandemic. So I think if we can get good at this and create a model, you may see it replicated many times, or maybe in other regions as well.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. And you're spot on with the need for partnerships with YMCA. Not that we can't do fun things with the kids, but that's not our expertise. Our expertise is going to get them ready in math and reading. Then we're going to turn it over to experts, because the last thing I want to do, like I said earlier in my comments, I don't want to have families pick between us and swimming at Mac Park, or us and basketball, because I think we lose that every day, because the kids need to have some fun. If we can work together and hopefully sell families on how we're partnering together, I think it'll go a long way. And I wish I had more information about the why, but in my defense, I only talked to them on Friday. They're willing to keep working with us. They're willing to partner. You're gonna have to trust me, and I'm gonna have to build and inflate a little bit. And I wish I had a little bit more detail, but you have my word. Every month I'll bring that back up to working memory and let you know where we're at, what we're doing so far. But right now, if there's a will, there's a way, and there's an interest on their part as well.
Good. Yeah, I can't imagine they wouldn't be. And they run one of the finest summer programs in the county. So it's second to none really in many ways. So I hope we can get that worked out. and deliver this at a reasonable cost at a superior education level. I was also thinking that in terms of STEM, we've been talking about STEM tonight. You can also, there's also people you can partnership with who do run STEM summer programs that could come in and you know, target different grade levels. So I'm very much for this, and I don't know what your schedule is for wanting to move it forward, or when you'll be finalized.
What, you know, if it's okay with the committee and the board, what I'd like to do on Monday is get tentative approval, you know, for the operate the KF not to exceed $250,000, knowing that however I develop it, I know that's my max. Right now we're about 180, but I think we need to look at the middle school and junior high, see what we could do there to provide some offerings there. And that's, I think, if I get at least permission to be the architect of this and start developing it, and I know what my top line is, I promise you I will do something pretty spectacular.
You're looking at a final vote. I'm just trying to get it in my head when our next audit and finance committee meeting. So you're looking at approval, final approval, one way or the other, about when?
If we could do Monday night, Madam Vice President. If not, I can wait till the second meeting in February if the board so chooses.
And you need, and you need financial approval as well? That
Yeah,
you're going to wrap that all into one motion?
I would like to, yes, Madam Vice President. That's okay. Just so I know what my top dollar is, what not to exceed.
Well, I think we can swing the 250. I'm not worried about that regardless. I think we've got enough of a surplus at this point. We have enough in the reserve. So unless the committee, Terry or Cinda, has a concern, I think the sooner you get this plan, the better off. So thank you. Thank you very much. I know it's been a lot of work.
Yes, and I appreciate everyone's worked hard. The principals, we met all day on Wednesday, the school psychs and the MTSS facilitators. I mean, everyone's working together. We got some work to do. But yeah, I just, and the only reason, if you're saying, well, Mike, why are you trying to get permission and before you have a plan? Because there's a lot more planning to be done. If the board's not interested, then, you know, I don't want to put us down, spend our efforts on that direction. But if the board's interested and I know what I can spend, then I think if I can, you know, develop something really nice with the team once I know what the framework is or the structure we have to operate within.
Terry, do you still have your hand up? I guess that's a no. Mike, what I'm hearing from the board is that we're going to support this. You're going to have to develop the details when you work with your partners, and we understand that those details are going to shift as you work them out through the next few months. So keep us informed. I don't think there's anybody on this board that doesn't want to see a summer program. And this year more than any other. And I also appreciate that you're going in at 250 so that if you do get 225 kids signing up, that we can accommodate them. Lord knows they need the help.
Thank you, sir.
Anything else from the board?
Yeah, Mr. Harley, you have, I think Ms. Blank has her hand up, sir.
That's it. Okay, Tammy.
Sorry, I hit the mouse. No, I think it's a great idea. I'm all for Mike's idea. So
Great. It's unanimous, Mike.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Now you just have to deliver something spectacular.
We'll figure it out. I got the right team to do it. We'll figure it out.
I know you will. Okay, great.
Next thing we want to spend some time talking to the board about is some reopening updates. You know, a couple of meetings ago, the board asked me to keep you abreast of our successes and challenges. And, you know, in past, we talked about third grade and kindergarten. So we just want to spend some time, you know, having a conversation about what are some of the issues and challenges we're facing. Right now, there's 3 of them, and they're all kind of intertwined. One, class sizes. Right now at the third grade and kindergarten level, we have reached capacity as far as under our current model, what that looks like. And the junior high and senior high are now getting to the point also too where we're not able to accommodate everyone who wanted to come back. For a long time we did. Now we're getting to the point where we just can't really do that. And I just want to make the board aware of that. I know previously we talked about, you know, not reopening completely until we had the second vaccine. And I'm not saying what to do anything. What I'm just saying is, you know, we're facing some challenges that I want to make the board aware of. Staffing is another issue that's become a concern, that we have an issue in 5th grade. And what I really need to, you know, some leadership and some direction from the board tonight is, if possible, is do you feel comfortable keeping the long-term subs in place? If so, then I know what steps I need to do to address the 5th grade issue, but I kind of need a direction based upon what you're feeling or thinking at this time. And I'll give you those options here in a minute, but, you know, that's a challenge in itself, is staffing. And then also the next one is the waiting list. We have 5 students in 3rd grade who want to come back to school, and under our current guidelines, we cannot fit them in. And we just want to have open conversation about that. And I'll give you some options here in a minute, but those are the three biggest challenges. And the principals are on the call as well as the central admin team, and they can add in as well. But there are some challenges that we're facing at this time, and we've done pretty well to get this far. But now we're starting to hit some issues, and I think it's important for us to bring it up to the board's attention. So here are just some options that we thought about. And again, we'll have to have some conversation on it because I'm kind of going in a lot of directions, and I understand it, but it's a very fluid, big topic. Number one, we could collapse some classrooms. As you know, we hired several temporary teachers. If you wanted to, we could hire a collapse, a temp teacher at both Horace Mann and Ike. This would disrupt anywhere from 15 to 40 students at Horace Mann and Ike itself. And we all agreed that the temps were expected to end in January, but we continued it because what we valued in the success we were having. But if we do this, sir, if we collapse any classes at 5th grade, now we're maxed out in 4th and 5th grade. So maybe we're just pushing the problem from 3rd grade now to 5th grade. And I don't say it to be flippant. I don't want to hide that from you, that if we did that, I'd maybe come back to you next month with another need. So, there's some issues there. And you got the also issue of, is it in the best interest of kids to just collapse that class and move to another teacher? And you can come back and say, well, Mike, that happens when people go on medical leave or sabbatical leave. So that's part of life. And yeah, that can happen. So it's just something to think about. That's an option. I'm not saying you have to do it. I think my job is to present you options. As far as the 3rd grade issue, we could require the families to stay in the 3rd grade until we have room. That's a tough decision, just because I think, our teachers do an amazing job when they're in front of our kids. I think there's a real benefit to that, and I'd like to do that. Or you can hire more temps, meaning you could say, look, Mike, you could try and hire one more temp in 3rd grade, which I struggle with because we only have a waiting list of 5 kids. So if I put those 5 kids in there, I'd have to take out several other kids from other classrooms, and that's still disrupting what they're used to. But again, the other issue is we need to go back to 5th grade. I could hire a day-to-day sub until the temp person is able to come back if you make a decision about staying with the temporary people. Or you could also do, you could say, look, Mike, the law doesn't require 6 feet of social distancing, but you are expected to do the maximum extent possible. If you wanted to, the board could say, Mike, what we'll do in 3rd grade, or in every grade, let's do social distancing to the maximum extent possible, and bring those 5 kids back. You have some options. None of them are easy options. And again, we're talking about 2 issues here: what we want to do in 3rd grade, but also what do we want to do in 5th grade with that temp teacher? Because if we want to replace her, then I have to find a sub, which I can. But it's really pushing you to make a decision. And I don't say that nastily, mean way, but it's pushing us to make a decision. Do we want to stay and commit with those temp teachers for the rest of the year? Now, we made some smart moves financially because we predicted these tough decisions and cuts coming. So that's budgeted for, and/or we can use that federal funding if we get all of it and help pay for this as well. But I just want to, really turn it over to committee, allow them to ask some clarifying questions and see what their comfort level is, sir, if that's okay with you.
Okay, let's clarify the temporary situation. How many teachers are we talking about there on the temps?
Boy, I want to say 6. Say we have 6 or 7 in place. Aaron, you're on the call. How many do we have? At the both 4 and 5s? Are you aware? I want to say
yeah,
6.
Mike, I got it. At the 4 or 5s, there's 1 at 4th grade and at my building, and 1 in 5th grade at my building, and I believe Chris is the same with 2. So there's 4 total at the 4 or 5 buildings.
So I have 3 at Horace Mann, 3 temporaries at Horace Mann.
I'm going to stick my neck out here, Mike. I hate the idea of collapsing these kids back into and shuffling up the classrooms. There's been enough disruption for these kids this year. I'd like to, if at all possible, I'd certainly like to hold this, what we have going, and that we don't disrupt 15 to 40 to 80 kids as everybody gets a new classroom, a new teacher. So my default here is to keep the temps through the end of the year, and that's my opinion. Board, do you have, Julia? Go ahead.
Well, yeah, I just wanted to develop that. What, Mike, what would, so you're saying we could try and hire one more temp for the third grade, which would the cost would be what?
The cost for a third grade, oh man, off the top of my head, I can't remember. It's probably a temporary teacher now for this year with salary, and if they get benefits, it could be anywhere between $50,000 to $60,000 for the rest of this year coming in where they're at. I think, yeah, again, it's two issues. One, we have to decide what we do in fifth grade, and right now we have the 5 temps in, plus the people doing synchronous and asynchronous work. But with the 1 temp, she's going to go out on a medical procedure, and if the board commits to keeping those positions, then I know I have to go get a sub. So that's the first issue, and then third grade is the other issue. And you can get a temp in third grade, or you can keep them on cyber, or you could say, look, let's do social distancing to the best of our ability.
Yeah.
But if it means we can't do it for 3 classes, then we can't do it.
But Mike,
Yeah.
when we talked about social distancing, we're only talking about modifying from, say, 6 to 4 feet in the elementaries, maybe 5 feet. So we'd still have more distance than the CDC recommends. We'd still be wearing the masks. Would it be possible to adopt a different standard for the elementary school?
Right now, we're exceeding the standard. I mean, the standard is you should do social distancing to the maximum extent possible. So if you say, Mike, bring the 5 kids back, and we're not going to put a teacher in that position, we could do that within the letter of the law. It does not violate anything. We just, we would have, I have to be transparent with the board. We would not have 6 feet of social distancing. You may have a row that's anywhere from 4, 5 feet apart. So that would change. That's what you're really looking at.
Yeah, and this is, as the weather gets better and the parents get more frustrated, we're going to see more kids coming back. And so the data on the transmission rates at the young kids was pretty good when we last looked at it. I would certainly consider modifying our 6 foot to a smaller number, not to go below 3. In order to
Yeah, but if you hire, Tom, excuse me, if you hire the temp, you don't have to. Is that correct?
No, we have 5 kids in third grade, Julia, that are sitting outside looking in right now. So
yeah, but
we have to hire the temps. We have to hire the temps in order to keep things the same. And then we have the five third graders.
I guess I'm misunderstanding. I think it's a real possibility that as the numbers start to appear to drop a little bit, I mean, who knows? It could get real cold and bad again, but and it could. It's only February. You're looking at maybe more than a 5-student problem coming up in April and May. If I were a parent, I'd want to get my child back as soon as I could, because every day counts. But so I don't see much way, unless we disrupt everybody, and nobody wants to do that. I can't imagine that we're not going to be looking at hiring another person, another temp. That's my take on it right now. I think we need to continue to social distance. I mean, physically distance. I mean, I just think it's important to we've been pretty good at 6 feet. Knock on wood. I don't even like to talk about it for fear that something could go wrong again. But with this whole pandemic, but I would think we try to stay as even as we can if it means hiring somebody else. And if you double that number, Mike, if you go to 10 people want to get their child seated every day, then, I think I would look ahead and maybe what you'd have to do in that event.
Are we going to run out of rooms, Mike?
No, we have room at East Pike. If it's okay with you, Madam Vice President, I'd like to turn the floor over to Dawn and Kelly, and they could talk about that, because we do have room. Again, once you give us the direction, I can, I know which way to run. And yeah, it's a tough decision anyway. I think the 5th grade's easy. If you say you value the social distancing, keep it, I can go find a sub that's easy. The big thing's 3rd grade, because then that means we're going to disrupt,
Well, let's break it up just a little bit, the discussion, okay?
Sure.
I don't hear anybody on the board objecting to maintaining the temporary teachers that we have. So find yourself a sub for the one going on medical leave and maintain that. So now the only question on the table is what to do with the 3rd grade and any other classes that are going to show up with excess subscriptions.
Yep. And this is where the problem comes back to you, sir. if you do this and we open a third grade classroom, which I'm all for, that's 5 kids. I'm going to disrupt anywhere from between 5 to 10 more kids because it would not make sense to have a teacher with 5 kids. So I'm going to pull kids from the current third grade classes, decrease their class sizes because they're maxed to offset that. So I just want to be fully transparent about that. Now, does it mean it's going to upset families? Some may not even care, but we'll let the building principals handle that out. But if the board's comfortable with that, then we can start going down that.
So if we hire a third grade teacher and we move 5 kids off the street into the building,
yes, sir.
That gives us 10. That gives us at least 10 slots, 11 slots for third grade to expand with more kids.
Even larger than that. Dawn, can you chime in? Your building, your rooms are quite large. How many kids are we putting in? Is it 18 in a third grade classroom?
I currently have 19 in a third grade classroom. One classroom has 20 because I have an accelerated math student. That's only for about an hour and a half each day. That is not opportune seating for any student for an entire day. So 19 is my capacity in third grade.
So we have capacity to bring, like to Mr. Springer's point, then 13 more back if they wanted to. So we could move some kids around, which I would recommend. I don't think I'd put a teacher with 5 kids. I don't think that's that's not proper use of district funds.
Okay.
What is a proper use of district funds is that we do reduce everyone else's class size and offset that. So maybe we take that group of 5 and then add some more kids in. We get to the group of about 12 to 15. I think that would be reasonable. It still gives us a little bit of buffer in Dawn's building.
Correct. And I have room in the special subject schedule. I have room in the classroom. So that's an easy logistical transition back. We just need to communicate to families. Kelly and I can work together on that.
Mike, I'm in favor of that. I don't see why we would set this up to be at a max. I'd give us a little free board to let that third grade go.
Yes, sir. Mr. President.
Yes, I wanted to say, I wanted to kind of get a better understanding. Are you saying that if we get just even 3 or 4 more that we would disrupt classes in order to build this extra classroom to accommodate these students, and that would maintain the 6-foot social distancing as an absolute? Is that correct?
Yeah, let me do it again. I apologize for doing a poor job. Right now, at third grade, we are maxed out. We have 5 kids on the waiting list. The options we presented, but if we bring a temporary teacher in, I would bring back those 5 kids immediately with that temporary teacher. In order, though, to look at taxpayers and say this is worth $50,000 to $70,000, I think it's beneficial if I then take several kids out of the remaining third grade classes to reduce their overall class size and to help justify the new class. So basically, we bring the 5 kids back from who want to come back from cyber. Then maybe I take 1 or 2 from each of the current third grade classes and make it larger. If not, the board would have to ask themselves, are they comfortable with a 1 to 5 ratio for a third grade classroom? To me, I would allow Dawn and Kelly the opportunity to talk to families and see if there's anyone who would want to go to smaller classrooms and see if there's anyone who's willing to switch classes. Now, it's going to be hard. We have to find good people, but so far we've been, we've shown that we can find some good people. But that's the only the thing that the board has to consider about or think about.
Yeah, I guess my concern would be the disruption of I think Tom originally said, one of your original comments, Tom, was you were concerned about the disruption that it might have on taking the kids in the middle of the year out of one classroom and one teacher that they're used to and putting them in with a whole brand new teacher, particularly in those younger grades. And I'm wondering whether or not and I recognize, Mike, your concern about being cognizant of the taxpayer, but I'm wondering whether or not those 5 kids or even 5 more kids couldn't be spread over. You must have 10 full classrooms of each of those 2 grades or maybe more. I'm wondering if we just simply drop 1 kid in each classroom, whether it's East Pike or Ben Franklin, or even at the 4 or 5 buildings for that matter, if it gets to be a problem. And then when you get to that 11th person, then you add the extra teacher, and then you come up with that.
But Walter, the extra kid in Don's classroom means that the social distance is less than 6 feet. So if you're not willing to change the social distancing, the only choice you have left is to create a new classroom.
Yeah, no, I get that, Tom. And I guess what I'm saying is, and I understand Julia's position about maintaining the social distancing, but I'm wondering if we can't, if you're only adding one student per class, allow that social distance to bend rather than break, and whether it would really have that big of an impact on the spread. I was reading an article today, a brief news snippet that said that there's a lot of indication that the spread isn't really coming from our classrooms in these larger community spreads that we've been experiencing. So I'm just wondering whether it wouldn't be better to just let them bend a little bit, and then when you get a sufficient number, and maybe 10's that right number, rather than upset 10 or 12 other kids. That's the question I'm raising.
I think we could raise that question in the board meeting, Walter. I don't think you can get 5 votes to change the social distancing today. And we need to make this move yesterday. Tom,
I'm okay having it with the full board and letting the board make a decision one way or the other on this as the full board. That's not a problem. I just worry about with the kids in their own routines now, not wanting to upset those routines for the kids that have already been in the class since.
But we're creating but if you're going to wait that long, you're creating a time drag. If he has to hire somebody, it's not easy to hire people. So it seems to me that we ought to know tonight whether people are willing to break the social distancing in the 3rd grade, because you could go from 5 to 7 in a hurry. So I mean, I just feel as though I wouldn't take, personally, I wouldn't, where I'm feeling right now, unless there's something else to be said, I would say that I would be very concerned about changing the social distancing rules, or I call it the physical distancing rules right now. But I think to wait another week, it's just a week lost with a problem that's going to probably accelerate. There's a likelihood that that's going to accelerate, I think.
I agree with you. Terry has his hand up, and Tammy did also. Terry, go ahead.
Yeah, I think too, maybe is it worth someone taking another look at these classroom layouts? Is there a room in each of the schools that is a larger room that could fit, 2 or 3 students or something, or that's all been explored? I guess my question, because I think, I somewhat agree with what Walter's saying. There may be some room there to bend.
Yeah, good question, Mr. Kerr. We did send Greg over to both buildings. Dawn and Kelly, why don't you speak about the work you did, how you measured, and what conclusions you came to about regards to space and size. Do you mind, Kelly? We'll go start with Dawn, then go to Kelly.
Yes, thank you, Mike. Mine's a lot simpler than Kelly's is. My classrooms are all pretty commonly sized. So the classroom spaces that I'm currently using for classrooms are the large spaces in the building. So they hold 19 desks, 6 feet apart. That is the max capacity in the classroom. So mine are all the same. The only exception is one of my kindergarten classrooms where the Promethean board and projection unit is spaced. I hold one less in that kindergarten room, but everybody else is the same. Kelly's a little bit different. She's got varying spaces all over the place. So I'll let Kelly take more time than I needed to explain this.
Thanks, Don. Like Don said, my classrooms are different sizes in every wing. The last wing where my 3rd grade is located has classrooms that are a very, very tiny a bit bigger, not much. My students are sitting from literally one side of the room. They're up against all the shelving, so students and teachers cannot use the shelves. Over to the other side of the room, they are smack dab against the lockers, so we are not able to use the lockers to store any of their materials, which is working out. Not ideal. The student that's sitting in the back row has 22 inches from the wall to their desk. That's it. And the teacher, if they're lucky, has an approximate 8-foot by 10-foot spot to teach in. That's if they're lucky. If they have a student teacher, then there's a student teacher taking up space in the 8 by 10 box. My largest classroom, the music room, is what we were considering collapsing and moving a classroom into that. It's an oddly shaped room. And when we talked about how the classroom would have had to have been set up to get maybe 18 students in there, the last children in the row most likely would not have been able to see the Promethean board from where they were sitting. We have squeezed as many children as we can possibly squeeze into the classrooms. There is barely any space to do anything but sit and stand. I just don't have the space. Even the library, I believe that was an option at one point, but that would require the removal of the library shelves, and they are built in. So I think that as far as space goes and moving more children in, we are out of options. And I don't know. Do you have any questions that I can answer, or any other thoughts or ideas?
Kelly, I do have one question, if you can, and this may not be a fair question for you and Dawn, but if the board's interested in bringing in a temporary teacher, let's talk about the disruption part. And I don't know if you can answer or not, but do you think there's enough families who would be willing to work with us and be able to go to this new classroom, or you think that's a non-negotiable? I'm curious because I think that may help the board's concern, because the board's saying, look, we don't want to disrupt kids, we don't want to hurt kids, and we don't want to cause angst, but I think we also recognize the fact that social distancing is working, and they want to see what our options are. But do you think there's families who would be interested or willing to move, so it's a voluntary basis maybe?
I think that's tough, because this is our third graders last year at either Ben Franklin or East Pike. So they want to come back to the school that they've essentially spent maybe from pre-K to kindergarten on at, like that they want to come back to their school. I guess, maybe circumstances have changed. We could survey all of our third grade families to see, would any of my families be willing to move over to East Pike? But without having an opportunity to talk to our families, I'm not sure that I can answer that question.
Dawn?
It's a little bit easier on my end, Mike, because it's essentially like we're not jumping buildings, which that could be the barrier on the Ben Franklin side of things. But I believe between Kelly and I have 4 third grades. I think Kelly has 5. So that's 9 third grades. And if we would just pull one student from each classroom, so to speak, and add, the 9 to it, we're looking at 15 kids. So that's a relatively easy way. I mean, we're not looking at a mass upsetting of students to pull this off.
And worst comes to worst, Dawn, we could just move 2 kids from each one of your classrooms. That way they're not changing schools, to Kelly's point, if we wanted to as well.
It does. I don't know how, if then we just put the 5 that are currently out there at East Pike. Yes, I see what you're saying. I was trying to think how to do this so it gave her some space in her classrooms as well.
Well, we know
that's what I was thinking, that Mike, that the 5 aren't going to get much of a choice if they want in, and that we're actually doing this as an accommodation. They're going to have to go where they go.
Agree. I mean, what I would do then, if the board's interested in this, what I'd probably recommend Dawn and Kelly look at, more so Dawn, you take the 5 who want in, they go to East Pike, and then you take 2 kids from each one of Dawn's classes, and they go in that classroom. You said you have 4 third grades, so that's what, 8 more kids, 8 plus 5. That's a reasonable number. I think it's harder to teach only 5 kids, 13 kids in a class. it's easier to teach. That sounds crazy, but I think
Walter, Tammy has a hand up. Let her
Oh,
go.
I'm sorry. You go ahead, Tammy, and then I have a question for Dawn.
Mike, do you think that there might be a lot? Okay, so the third grades are all full. What are the odds or the average of maybe another couple of third graders coming in before the end of the school year?
yeah, if you would ask me in September, I'd tell you not likely, but it has been odd. In December and January, Miss Blank, according to Kelly and Dawn's records, we had more new enrollees than I've ever seen at Indiana in my 3 years here. So either they didn't have to give me the right number, or it's just an odd year. But this year in December and January, we were good. When the last time this board met, we were good. We were at a good spot. And then at the end of the second 9 weeks, we surveyed some people and more people joined the meeting. And that's where it got us to where we're at today. I mean, joined the school district, and that's where it got us over that number today. So, and then it's also, you got some kids who want to come back as a result too from the cyber situation as well.
Okay.
I think that we're one of the only districts that are open, and that everybody's here coming back 5 days a week. So we look very attractive to the surrounding areas. And I think that that's why we're bringing more families and more children in, because they want their children in school.
So my next question would be, if we put all 5 in, because you don't have any room, Kelly, at East Pike, how much would that shorten the distance between the kids? I mean, if it goes down to 5 feet between, social spacing.
Tammy, if we hire a teacher, we get a new classroom. So we would maintain the 6-foot distance at East Pike. And we then have about 14 vacant seats in East Pike. So anybody that came back in third grade, we would assign East Pike.
I know. I'm just thinking that trying to not have as much disruption for the kids that are being pulled out of their rooms, because trying to catch up and figure out what everybody else is doing from 3 different classrooms could be Little House on the Prairie schoolhouse style. I'm just thinking.
So, Mike, I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt, but we had a third grade teacher on maternity leave who just came back today. So we had a long-term sub in my third grade classes at East Pike who has been there since September. So she knows the kids, she knows the families, the disruption, which I'm not going to minimize. It would be a disruption moving a child from one classroom to another, but we wouldn't be moving them in on a complete stranger who is not used to the curriculum and what's been happening. So we're kind of in an opportune time. I'm not going to lie. I feel a little bit bad here. Aaron and I had a conversation this morning, and I spoke really highly for this young lady to ship her to Eisenhower. And I did text Aaron in the middle of the meeting asking if I could renege on my deal if this worked out, that we added a third grade teacher.
So, Ms. Blank, that's important to know, because that could eliminate some of the disruption. If the board's interested in maintaining social distancing, then it could be a pretty seamless transition then, because the kids would know her,
Yeah, I like that idea. Bad Mr. Springer. Bad.
I think, Mr. Harley, I just need some clarity from the board so I know what to do. That's all.
Terry has his hand up. Let's see what he has to say. Terry?
You want Walter to go first? Because he wants to speak.
No, go ahead, Terry. Go ahead, Terry.
Well, this is probably going to be an easy question to answer. Is it even possible to have this additional room serviced by a teacher's aide or assistant, and then you would video in from another classroom the instruction, or that's not possible?
That's difficult. I don't think so. I think that would be an issue that would be brought up through the collective bargaining agreement that may present some issues. So I can double check, sir, but I would say at this point, if I had to pick right now, I'd say probably not, sir.
Mike, Walter, do you want to go?
Yeah, the question I have for Dawn is, though, originally you were asked, Dawn, whether or not you thought the parents would accept the movement, or if you thought there were the 10 parents or 8 parents, whatever it would be, that would actually say, yeah, okay, go ahead and move my kid from their current classroom to this new classroom. I'm not sure if you answered the question, or if you did, I wasn't following, but do you have some feel where the parents are on this, or is this something where you need to query them to find out what their thoughts were on?
I initially was just thinking about grabbing a student out of every one of the 3rd grade classrooms, but as Mike mentioned, if we just disrupt the East Pike students that are currently in a 3rd grade classroom, that I would say that would be a minimal disruption for them. And I do think that we'd have parents that would be okay with that move and would be on board with that decision. Neither Kelly nor I have reached out to any 3rd grade family indicating that this was even a remote possibility. So we're kind of answering your questions as best we can without involving input from the parents. What we didn't want to do is advertise, hey, we're thinking of reopening a classroom, and it's not even be at the board level. So we've had no contact at all with our families.
I guess my follow-up question then would be to Mike, whether it makes sense to try to get that figured out. I agree with you, Mike. I think on your comment, if we knew that the parents would certainly support that kind of a plan that Dawn and you guys were talking about, then it would certainly make it a lot easier, at least from my perspective, to support it as well.
So, Mr. President, Mr. Hurley, would this be okay? Let's say tentatively I have board support to post a long-term sub for 3rd grade, and then we'll work like heck this week to try to have Dawn call some families, see if we can fill that class. And if we do, I'll bring it forward on Monday night. Would that be permissible, Mr. Hurley, Mr. President?
Mike, I'm not going to, I think what's permissible is that we make the motion to hire the additional teacher, the additional long-term sub, and you guys do what you're supposed to do. You make the best decisions for the kids, and you assign what you need to assign. I think this is probably a little beyond what the board, I think we've expressed our concern to disrupt the kids, but I think we can rely on you folks to do the best interest of the 9 or 10 kids you might move. So I'm going to simplify this. I think you should just bring forward the opportunity to hire an additional 3rd grade teacher as a long-term sub, and you guys work out the details.
Okay.
Okay. And I'm sure the board will talk about this, on Monday night, but the motion should be pretty straightforward.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Terry, you still have your hand up. Do you mean to have it up? Nope. Took it down. Okay. I think we can move forward, Mike.
Okay. I know we're running out of time, so I'll go quickly. Number 3, United Way Awards. They're simply asking to use the high school parking lot. I had them get in contact with Mr. McElhaney, so he's aware of it. They're just going to do a drive up to receive their awards, along with a very short program leading up to that to reveal the total dollars raised. I think it's a good community service project to work with them, to collaborate with them with social distancing and having to do drive-bys. This makes sense for them to be able to use it. So respectfully, I'm asking you to support their request. I'm fine with it. I talked to Mr. President, and we both agreed we should bring it here to make sure everyone else is comfortable with it. But in this case, I think it's a fair request. It's a kind request, and I'd like us to support it.
Any reason not to support it from the board? I think we can bring it forward, Mike. I think you're good.
Okay. Next, we have Mr. Sheeran and Miss Woods, who did an incredible project. Mr. Heinrich, they'll get all the credit, but I have to tell them how amazing they are because it's really cool. It was really cool to see what they're doing. This board challenged us to do more in the STEM area in grades 4 and 5, and Miss Woods and Mr. Sheeran met that moment and ran through a wall. They did an amazing job. And Mr. Heinrich, I'll allow you to introduce them and tell them the great work, but not to be short, but be short, Mr. Heinrich.
Yes, sir. In brief, these 2 outstanding teachers partnered with the the Penn State Readiness Institute to provide an unforgettable project that will live with our kids forever. And let them do the talking, Mr. Sheeran and Mrs. Woods.
Could I go ahead and present on screen?
Mr. Sheeran is, yes,
Absolutely.
Mr. Sheeran is going to present.
Yep.
Thank you so much for this opportunity to talk to you a little bit about hashtag IIC Hope Moonshot. And this was an incredible experience, and I am just so thankful that our board gave us the go-ahead for this and that we were able to organize a district-wide event and bring some enrichment and STEAM to all the grade levels. So I first learned about this through an email from the STEM Coalition on behalf of Jude Pittman. Miss Amanda Smith sent out an email indicating that this opportunity was available. And so then I pitched the idea to Mr. Heinrich, and he gave us the go, and we were very honored and pleased to have the opportunity to do this. And we had shared with you, the school board, this presentation in an earlier version, which is the one that we also shared with school principals, who then shared that with their teachers. And so the what of this, it is a combined effort between the Penn State Readiness Institute and a company called Moonshots in Education. And they are paying for a payload to be sent to the moon on the Peregrine lander. And so what is also wonderful about this experience was that Mr. Sheeran reached out to Astrobotic, and we were able to secure a guest speaker, actually the mission director for the Peregrine lander, and he joined us for a virtual assembly that was available district-wide. And so the next slide, Mr. Sheeran, can move it ahead. And so I'll pause, and Mr. Sheeran, you go ahead. I got ahead of myself just a little bit, but go ahead, sir.
That's okay. Sure. So we went ahead and we had contacted Astrobotic when I realized that they're based right in Pittsburgh. So that was one of the early contacts we made. As we were developing this mission, we also decided to reach out to all of the administration, school psychs, and the MTSS coordinators, guidance counselors, just to get some messages of hope that would help to share the idea and get classrooms inspired to share messages of hope that we could send off to the moon. As we talked, in the background with the administration, we were also drumming up some excitement with the kids in the classroom too. And they were starting to hear that something that they were going to do was actually going to land on the moon. So that was really exciting for the classes. So if you do have a moment at some time, like I said, we are sharing this presentation with you. You should receive an email with a link to it, and you can see the videos that have been presented by the principals and all the other administrators that were able to add a video for us. So one of the things that we really wanted to do too is to have students think about why we were doing this. For me personally, with 4th and 5th grade, we had just finished up units on coding, and in 4th grade, and in 5th grade, we had just been coming to an end of a unit on flight. So there was no better way to wrap both of these together than with robotics and rocketry. So I really wanted to share this with them. But one of the things that I tried to convey to them is that when this happens, I'm now going to look at the moon differently when I look at it in the night sky. And we'll be reminded of what we hope for and how everything that we do here can become a reality one day. So as Ms. Woods mentioned earlier, one of the things that we wanted to do was try to get everybody in the district to get the opportunity to send their messages to the moon, but we wanted them to know why we were doing this and what it was. So the best way to reach as many people as possible, we decided was going to be our first district-wide virtual assembly. And we invited everybody to participate and to join in on a Google Meet at 10:30 a.m. on Wednesday, January 20th. It was great because it was a palindrome day. 1/20/2021 was the same forward and backwards. So what better way to celebrate than with a virtual assembly? We do have the video available for you to see the entire virtual assembly, but we also had a few moments where you can see the director of the mission, Mr. Sharad Bhaskaran from Astrobotic, speaking to the students. Again, with time crunches tonight and my computer running a little bit slowly, I don't want to take up the bandwidth for that at the moment. But if you do have a chance, I do recommend that you take a look at some of the things that we talked about. You'll also see students posing questions, and his answers to them were really phenomenal. He was very gracious in answering students' questions and addressing what they were interested in.
The other thing that I wanted to highlight about the virtual assembly is that we had students from all across the district ask questions. So we had a pre-K student all the way up to a junior high student as well. So we really were able to reach our mission that everyone in the district had the opportunity to participate. And I also want to thank Miss Bailey Orchard for the work that she did to rally the junior high and get out those permission slips, because she was integral in helping this be successful at that school. So I just wanted to mention her and share my appreciation for the hard work that she did as well to ensure the success of this mission. And the other thing that we wanted to share was we took to Twitter and to share out, and and you can see here that this was very successful. We got a lot of recognition and just did a lot of networking with this. And one of our teachers at Ben Franklin, Miss Zoe Gailey, was recognized by the director of the Readiness Institute at Penn State, and she was recommended to participate in a KDKA interview. And so she and I had the opportunity to go ahead and be interviewed on KDKA, and that was just another wonderful outpouring of this excellent, beautiful opportunity. So just wanted to share that, and we've also included the clips from there, so you also could listen to that as well.
Yeah, you can listen to the full audio of the call. It was really great to listen to, because we got to hear the teacher explaining how one classroom actually just took this and ran with it, and to hear the kids sharing their hopes. Every time I hear some of the things that we've gotten back, some of the feedback, it's just really really heartwarming, and gives us hope, I think, for the future. Along that same line, we did get some messages back from other classrooms. So if you do have a chance, we have the Ben Franklin pre-K hopes and dreams statement that they made. And there's a video that they made with the statements that they made about what they want to be when they grow up too. A lot of really adorable things going on there in pre-K. Even some wanting to be, of course, basketball stars, dancers, and one princess for sure.
We also have received videos that were made by teachers, and then I was also able to come and create a wee video for Miss Cook's class highlighting what they did in kindergarten. So this was just really a wonderful opportunity to put our toe into not only school-wide enrichment, but district-wide enrichment. And we learned a lot from it, and we really hope to have more opportunities to So full steam ahead with this and continue enriching district-wide and really breaking down the silos that we have had in the past and recognize that we are one district. And so I really appreciate the opportunity to have been able to be a part of that and to work with Mr. Sheeran and to see the amazing product that came out of this experience. So thank you so much for your time, and we hope that you enjoy this presentation. And another amazing thing to share is that due to very popular demand, the deadline for submission for Hope Moonshot has been extended to March 1st of 2021. So that's amazing and incredible. So more people have the opportunity to share their hopes with the moon. And there is a link in the slideshow that people can access to send their hope to the moon. So spread the word for this amazing
That is our final call to action.
opportunity. Yes, absolutely.
Sorry to interrupt you.
Thank you.
That is our final call to action to you, the board members, as well, too. We would love to have you participate and send your hopes to the moon with us. So please feel free to use that link when you get the presentation and send your hopes to the moon right alongside our students.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Dave and Elizabeth. You both are simply amazing. We appreciate all the work you put in this. You made something just so spectacular for us and our kids, and I really appreciate everything you've done.
Well, it was our pleasure, and thank you.
Mr. Harley, if it's okay with you, move on to the next one.
What do you have up your sleeve now, Mike?
Dyslexia pilot update. We have a very special guest with us, Ms. Carrie Kinter, on the call. She's simply amazing. One of our reading specialists at East Pike. Mr. Heinrich, I'll turn over to you to introduce, try to beat that introduction, but I'll turn over to you to introduce Ms. Carrie Kinter, and then you guys can go from there.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Carrie Kinter is one of the reading specialists here, reading specialist extraordinaire, we call her. She is taking the lead on this project, and she's here to update us on the dyslexia pilot and the interventions therein. So, Ms. Kinter.
Thank you. Thank you guys very much. That was a very nice introduction. I almost wish I had my earbuds unplugged and my husband could have heard it over there. But anyway, thank you very much. And thank you for having me tonight. I will try to keep this very short and quick. Dr. McMaster's asked me to share a little bit about what was going on with the dyslexia project and specifically the Apple intervention that we're using at East Pike. So I have a very, very brief few slides I'll show you guys if that's okay if I present now. Oh, maybe I should have done a window. You can see my tabs though. I think it's okay. There we go. If you guys can see, are you guys able to see that okay?
Nothing yet, Ms. Carrie.
Okay, hopefully it's loading shortly.
Oh, yep, it's loading now.
Okay, great. So I just wanted to let everyone kind of give a little background information about what is the Apple intervention that we're using at East Pike. It is a research-based structured literacy program that systematically teaches the entire structure of the English language. So it's very interesting because it actually is used at all grade levels. It can be used from kindergarten all the way up through high school. When we participated in the therapy training, we experienced videos of teachers using it at the high school level. Each lesson provides direct, explicit instruction. The lessons are cumulative and they do follow a logical order. There's a scope and sequence that presents the alphabetic principle and order from frequency. So it goes from the simplest to the most complex. And what's really neat about this intervention program is that there are checkpoints for mastery that are built into every single lesson. That's really important to note just because it's different than any other intervention program that I have used before. So I think that that makes this one very unique and specific, that children must master the content that they are presented and taught directly first before we're able to move on to the next letters or the next part. And I just did include a few pictures to show everyone today. What's really cool about the Apple program is that it's through all hands-on learning. When they call it 3D and OG, it really is 3D with a multisensory approach. So you begin locking in their letters and their letter sounds. And what I have here on this first slide are just pictures of, for example, we would be working just on the letter A. And you begin by showing objects, right? So the children are able to get the objects in their hands and they're holding it and they're holding that apple and they're saying a, a. We have a little astronaut, goes well with the Hope Moon shoot that we were just hearing about. They're holding the objects though, and they're touching them and they're saying the letter names and they're saying the sounds. I included a second picture here for a different letter that would be done on a different day. So just giving you those some examples of what they're seeing. The card that you're seeing is actually a bumpy raised letter card. So children are using their hand and they're tracing the letter. They're feeling the bumpy sensation on their finger as they're saying the letter name and the letter sound, kind of going through that process. And on this next slide, it has a few of the other, 3D multisensory features of this program. In the top left corner, what you'll see there is our clear tracing board. It's a piece of glass, and the children are using their dry erase markers to actually work on their letter formation. In the middle there, we have a bead tray, and that's filled with glass beads. And whether you're a sensory person or not, I think that you would enjoy the ability of, practicing the letter and forming it in those bead trays with the feel on your fingers. And through this whole process, children are saying their letter names and they're saying their sounds. And finally, in the top right, you'll see what's a plastic canvas. It's bumpy. So now they're using their hand and they're forming the letter again, and just a new sensory approach to feeling the letter, hearing the letter, saying the letter. So just to kind of update everyone on what we have going on at East Pike specifically, these are the trained therapists here that I have listed. So we have the 3 reading specialists, Mandy and Justin and I, and Sue Brown all attended a training in person actually last February. I guess you could kind of say it was our last hurrah before COVID struck. Maybe that was my last vacation going to Pittsburgh for the training. But we went and we were trained right before the shutdown. And since then, we've had another learning support teacher, Wendy Moreau, and just recently our speech pathologists, Jen Pino and Tara Maruka, participated, and they are trained as well in our building to provide this therapy. And what we're currently doing is Mandy and I are both servicing children, and we're working with 11 kindergartners and 2 first graders for this program. Mandy Yanishik is one of the reading specialists, and she is teaching a 2nd grade synchronous class. So because of our limited title staffing, it was very nice of her to try to condense her schedule, and we're using one of the literacy GAs to help support her groups, some small group work in the afternoon, so that she could be freed up to help with this. And so between the 2 of us, these are the children that we're able to see. And the last thing that I just wanted to share with you was kind of an example of some student progress that we're seeing. These are 2 students. They are first grade students that I am working with, and I see them 5 days a week for 30 to 40 minutes. And I just want to note that in the beginning of our program, we had 0 letter sounds and 0 in terms of, you'll see noted there, visual and auditory. So what we do is we are checking for mastery at the end of the lesson. And what it actually goes through is you show them the letter and they have to say the letter name and the sound, and then they're actually, for their auditory drill, they're writing it. And I just wanted to show you the progress that we've seen and to give you a time frame. So I was put back into the reading specialist position in November, and then we did have our holiday break and a little bit of a shutdown. So we were working in person for just about a month when I saw these results. So I was working from about December 10th until right before our Acadians testing window, which was on January 13th was the last day. So about a month of instruction. So I had these 2 students who went from 0 letters and 0 sounds. And this was the growth that I saw over that period of time. And I was very impressed to see. These are 2 specific students in first grade who I worked with all through kindergarten. Have really struggled. And what was unique about this program is it gave them the ability to see the letters and to hear the sounds and learn it in a different way. And I would consider this, a lot of progress and a lot of growth with these students who we weren't seeing in our other programming that we had previously tried with them. So I just wanted to show you this so you could kind of get a real clear picture of the benefits that this program and the dyslexia pilot is having in our building, specifically at East Pike. So that's all that I have for tonight. I know that it's been a busy night, so I'll kind of jump out of here from presenting my screen, and I would be happy to answer any questions if anyone has anything, or if you'd like me to elaborate further, I'm happy to do that as well.
Mr. Harley will turn over to the committee, see if there's anything from the committee.
Julia,
Go, Madam Vice President.
you have your hand up, Julia.
I think you're muted.
But now you're muted. Put your hand down and turn your sound on. There we go.
Thank you, Mrs. Kinter. That was, I've been so interested in this, and I'm happy you could come in tonight. I'm curious about how flexible you can be with a student who needs a little bit more time, or maybe one that's moving along rapidly. So you said something about 11 students or something about, could you break it down to a per day basis, what your day might look like in terms of your actual time?
Sure. So the project was originally just to use this intervention program with our kindergartners. So when I came back to the position, we started with our kindergartners, and we looked at our kindergartners, our neediest students in kindergarten, based on our beginning of the year testing data that we had. And so what I currently see is I have kindergartners toggling on a schedule. So I have a 45-minute block where I see my groups every other day. So we have a day 1 through day 6, so that it kind of gets everyone equal time. And so those students are seen every other day for about 30 minutes. Our kindergartners can handle right now. Well, I do have a block up to 40 minutes, and we're getting there. I think they're getting closer. Now, the other students that I showed you the data from the results, those are first graders, and I see them. I was able to build into the schedule a block just to see them, knowing that we had these students with very specific needs and really are at-risk students, which this program is really designed for and created for. You think about our at-risk learners who have not mastered these letters and sounds, and we say, what else can we give to them? This Apple program is really beautifully designed for our special needs and at-risk learners who have been given multiple exposures and opportunities with other programs and haven't seen it. So I see those first graders every day. So that's 5 days a week. And I do hope going forward, when additional title staffing is back, when, hopefully at the beginning of next year, I think that this program works really well on a 5-day-a-week model. And I would love to support students that way when there's more of us able to do it. I just wanted to make sure I had time available in my schedule to also support 2nd and 3rd graders at this time. But that's where we're currently. So I see 5 kindergartners and 2 first graders, and Mandy is seeing 6 kindergartners in that toggling schedule as well, back and forth.
Thank you. Thank you. That's just wonderful. That's just, I'm so glad you like the program and think it's a good one. Good.
I really do. I think our district is very lucky to have it. And have more people participating in the training. I'm sure Mr. Banny can be more specific, but I believe we're up to 5 people trained also at Ben Franklin. I know they're a year behind us in the pilot, but I mean, for us to really have our title staffing kind of back on board next year, I think it's going to be an excellent resource for us to really make sure we're making time and giving these students the most opportunity to learn. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for what you do.
No problem. Thank you very much, and have a good evening. Thank you, guys.
Michael, what other exciting things are you doing this week?
We have 2 more. If it's okay with you, I'd like to get through these 2 more, and we'll skip the building reports out.
Oh, come on. We're in for the long haul here.
Mr. Heinrich and Mr. Macklin, I believe, have a student coming tonight and talk about the AP capstone program they have. Mr. Heinrich, you mind if I turn it over to you, sir?
Yeah, and I will turn it over to Mr. McElhaney.
Thank you, Mr. Vukovic. Thank you, Mr. Heinrich. It is my honor and privilege this evening to introduce a student. His name is Lucas Connell. Lucas is a senior who is enrolled in our leadership seminar class, one of a couple seminar offerings we have here at the senior high school. Lucas, for one of his leadership projects, is presenting and proposing an AP capstone program. Lucas is a unique student. He is enrolled in many AP classes, but he's additionally a leader in the technology education department here at our school. So he is a true example of a STEM student that we have here. Lucas, without further ado, how would you like to go? And additionally, I also have 2 teachers who are involved in this as well. They are on this evening, Dr. Bond, and we also have Ms. Hickson, who play an integral part in this opportunity. So with that, Lucas.
Hi, thank you, Mr. McElhaney. Mr. Vukovic, could you stop presenting so that I can share my screen?
Yes, actually, Randy, Mr. O'Neill's presenting. Mr. O'Neill, can you give this gentleman access, sir? There you go, sir.
Okay, can you all see that?
We can, sir.
All right, perfect. So what I wanted to talk to you all tonight about is AP Capstone, and I'm hoping to have this implemented in our building for the 2022-2023 school year. So what is the AP Capstone program? It is 2 classes, AP Seminar and then AP Research following it. And it's based on the Quest process, which is basically a core skill curriculum designed for research. With this AP Capstone program, you have the opportunity for a capstone diploma, which is if students take these 2 exams, they pass with a 3 or higher, and they also pass with a 3 on 4 other AP exams, they'll earn a capstone diploma, and that's kind of like a higher distinction for these students. So AP Seminar is the first of the 2 classes, and in this class, students focus on developing research, collaboration, and analysis skills in a research-based setting. So they're going to be looking at a variety of source material and gain an understanding of the overall research process. The assessment for this class includes 3 parts: a team project and presentation, as well as an individual research essay and presentation, and finally an end of course AP exam, like with most other AP courses. So following AP Seminar is AP Research, and in this class, students build on their skills that they learn in AP Seminar, and they use those to study an individual interest, and they do a year-long project based on their topic of choice. This assessment is 2 parts. These students write a 4,000 to 5,000 word paper. It's kind of like a thesis paper if you were in college and you had to write a thesis paper for your major. And students will also have to do a presentation and an oral defense, which would be evaluated by their teacher. For this class, like I said, they have to have taken AP Seminar the previous year. So teachers for these 2 classes, for AP Seminar, we're looking at Dr. Sarah Bond. She's an English teacher at IHS. And for research, it would be Mrs. Hickson. And she is currently a biology and environmental science teacher. And she is also a science club advisor, which is one of our main research initiatives in our school right now. So I'm sure she'd be more than happy to talk about that if you prompted her. So why am I talking to you about this now? Of course, we're going into this, and I said for the 2022-2023 school year. Well, that's really closer than it might seem, as scheduling has to be approved, by my understanding, for by November for that school year. And we also need curriculum funding and scheduling approved, as there is a training cost to this. Teachers, before their first year teaching this class in that summer, they have to attend a 5-day workshop, and there are travel expenses associated with that, and it's also about $1,000 per participant. So with this implementation down the road, of course, the first year, only Dr. Bond would have to get that, and then the following year, it'd be Mrs. Hickson receiving that training. My motivation for this, for pushing for this, is that I had some previous research experience at the Governor's School for the Sciences over the summer. That's at CMU. And during that time, I met some students that had this research initiative in their school, and they were really enthusiastic about it. And it showed in our own research project their commitment and their greater skills than the students who haven't had that experience before. Finally, this is my leadership initiative, as Mr. McElhaney mentioned, and as I'm a senior this year, I really want to be able to make sure that I can advocate for future students and getting them this, and hopefully getting them this opportunity. So that's all I have. In the interest of time, I've shortened my presentation up a little bit, but if you want to see the full presentation, it is on the agenda. So thank you, and are there any questions?
Mr. McElhaney, as the building principal, what benefit do you think this brings to your curriculum and the current AP programming?
I think it brings tremendous benefit, Mr. Vukovic, not only with our current AP programming, but also I think it provides opportunities for students who may not necessarily be interested in traditional AP programming, but to become involved in this because of the level of research and the writing that goes with it. I see it as a great supplement to Ms. Hickson's Science Club, which is not an AP program, but it does attract many students who are wishing to further investigate, research, test those types of science concepts and projects. We're very successful with that. I see this also being very successful with Dr. Bond. She most recently, and she can talk about this, had a student who was a winner in a contest for fiction, and I know she could do better justice than I can. So I see this as an outgrowth and also an outreach to many other departments in our area. We try to have these seminar programs within our building so that students with higher interest levels in those particular areas can have a greater connection to not only school, but for instance, their post-secondary studies or career aspirations.
Mr. McElhaney, talk to us about staffing. Is there going to be an additional need for staffing? Meaning, are you going to come forward asking for additional staff members, or is this something you can fit in your current caseload with your current staff that you have, sir?
No, this would be something that we would work within our current staffing. It would be like any other offering that we would have. You know, initially we would anticipate, you know, lower numbers, but by the second year we would have to have, I think right now we run 8 to 10. We have to at least 8 to 10 students in it. If we didn't, we just couldn't offer that class. And we would take a look at anytime we do scheduling is when the students make the request. We look at all the requests that come to a particular department, and then we prioritize based on student request and graduation requirements.
Mr. Harley, if it's okay with you, I'd love to hear from Dr. Bond and Ms. Hickson. I think it's incredible they're thinking about doing this and supporting this young man. So maybe, and if you don't want to, ladies, you don't have to. I just want to give you the opportunity. You endured the meeting the whole entire time. I'd hate to give you a chance to say something if you so choose.
Sure, I'd love to speak, and it is a marathon. I imagine it would, be like this, but I learned a lot tonight. So I do a lot of work with students that are interested in specific things. We work with IUP to get them out and doing research, but we don't spend a lot of time focusing on communicating that research. What we do is outside of the curriculum. It's extra or co-curricular, we call it. This would pull it more into the mainstream. And the program itself has a really neat aspect where it's going to empower students to really dig deep into their content for research, find the gap in the knowledge in the real world, right? And actually set them up to possibly make a change that can apply to a real world application. So it's really a neat program. And I don't think anything could speak louder than having a student come and say, hey, I want to write a 20-page research paper. Can we do this at my high school? And if you guys have any other questions for me about it, but I just think it's a phenomenal thing. And speaking to, being concerned that it's just an AP offering, there's a lot of students that I work with that are not interested in AP classes, but are curious about the world around them, all of the STEM fields, and this would be an outlet for them to further explore and set them up for success in the future.
And on the seminar end, the part that I'm excited about is the opportunity for the students to start investigating their own question. So a lot of this, the seminar piece involves the student developing what questions they want to answer, doing some practice and developing some background knowledge, but then having them work on that. And then also the fact that the seminar class includes a group activity where they take one topic and each member of the group looks at that topic from a different lens, has a lot of 21st century skills involved in it. The research component, the writing component, the presentation component, all of those pieces that will really set them off later on, because I can see some of these students who might take this class maybe have aspirations beyond a master or beyond a master's, that too, but beyond a bachelor's degree, where this kind of process, coming up with a question, to answer is probably the hardest part when you are trying to do your own research, and just having that extra practice in a safe a safe zone with a mentor, and being able to bounce that question off other like-minded individuals and students, I think has a lot of benefit for students this age.
Mr. Harley, I'll turn it over to you. Any other questions from the committee?
I think this falls in Walter's technical writing program that he's been trying to get off the ground. That's for sure. This wouldn't replace any AP class that we currently are offering, Wade?
No, the AP classes we offer now are very content specific. This course will allow students to explore many different areas of study, content, discipline, etc.
Is there an AP test in this one or not? There's not.
It does have an AP assessment. There is writing, there's performance with it as well.
But there's not the test at the end of the day.
There is yes, in May, there is an assessment component, a summative assessment, and then also there's a performance part included.
Okay, do we have any idea what the total cost will be?
Right now, I understand that it is $1,000 for the registration costs, and that's for the training. The travel cost will be separate. We are looking at to see if there's a virtual option that goes with that to help with those costs. But in any case, we would only be able to support one teacher each summer to go. But as this is being phased in, you would have phase 1 the first year and then phase 2 the second year. The training is required for this program.
Mike, couldn't we cover this under professional development?
We could. We can work with Rob, see what's available.
People trained, and I could see them being useful to each other than to have a lone wolf out there for a year.
Yeah, my only question, Mr. McElhaney, additional, is there any barriers that would preclude kids from entering this? So, you know, Ms. Hickson talked about, I think Lucas did as well, not your average AP kid. It's not, there's not going to be barriers, right? So enrollment, how do you enroll in this class? Is it open for every kid, or do you have to, is there any prerequisites that would preclude kids from being part of this? I'm curious about that.
That's a very good question, Mr. Vukovic. The College Board is really pushing and promoting equity. You know, the recommendation, of course, be some level of academic preparation for the course. But, you know, that is something the College Board is pushing for right now, is equity, that to remove a lot of those barriers that are quote unquote unnatural, but instead, you know, take a look at and define what exactly is that academic preparation for any level of AP offering.
Tammy, you had your hand up. Do you want to have a question?
This kind of sounds a lot like the Hillman Cancer Research Project that they have in the summer for the kids, and they do very, very well. I'm all for exploring this further and trying to get it done.
Walter, you were saying? Walter?
Yeah, Tammy, did you finish?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me, Tom?
Yep. Go ahead, Walter. We're on the edge of our seats.
Tom, can you hear me now?
Yes, please.
Okay. I turned the volume back up. Okay. The question I think you guys have raised is an interesting one. You are correct, Tom. This does kind of go directly to my pet peeve of trying to get more technical research type writing, particularly those pursuing some sort of a STEM field. This is something ultimately I think they'll find great value in. So I'm glad to see this brought about. But the question about what the College Board is doing and trying to break down the barriers, I think is also equally good, because of the real question and what I had envisioned was having some sort of a program, maybe not to this level of intensity, but to have a course similar to this, that all of our students that were pursuing STEM career fields could take this their senior year in lieu of what they would traditionally take in the literature program.
I can add to that, Mr. Schroth. We have a program, or excuse me, offering. It's a semester course. It satisfies English graduation requirements. It's called Communicating in the STEM World. We have that offering, and Mr. Farina teaches that currently. And depending on, the demand for it, that's when we would offer it.
Wade, would this class substitute for an English class?
Yeah.
There are two schools of thought with that. If it were to substitute for an English course, then it would have to adhere to all of the English standards that go with it. So in effect, it could in that regard. However, Lucas, correct me if I'm wrong, when we met with the advisor from Elizabeth Ford, it was her recommendation not to do that, so that it will allow more flexibility with students in their particular forms and styles of writing and what they would need to do for class.
Mike, I don't see any reason not to bring this forward and fully fund it. Let's see what we can do with it.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Okay, Lucas, thank you for your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Harley.
Mr. Harley, we do have one more item, but I'll defer to you. We're going on 3 hours. Would you like to get through the civics conversation, or would you like to have that at our next meeting? I'll defer to you, sir. I would respectfully request that we hold off on the building reports at the very least.
Gosh, we've already come so far, Mike. Can we do the civics thing?
Yes, sir. At the pleasure of the board, sir.
Please, let's see if we can do one more thing.
Okay, Mr. Heinrich, I'll turn over to you.
Yes, sir. Earlier in the year, the board was briefed on Act 35 and how it has changed. And it's established a requirement for us to assess our student civics literacy. Mr. Bill Duty has led a team of teachers who have written a test assessment that is going to go at the end of our civics course. So there's 2 items that we are discussing here tonight. Number one, we're going to share the test with you. Mr. Duty is going to give a brief presentation on the exam itself, and then we're going to have a brief conversation about the scope and sequence of our civics and government curriculum. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Duty and Mr. McElhaney.
Thank you, Mr. Heinrich. Before I turn it over to Mr. Duty, just to say that the civics proficiency exam, that is a requirement for school districts, that any grade now that teaches the civics, there has to be a proficiency exam that goes with it that talks about, or excuse me, assesses civics understanding education with students. If I could, Mr. Heinrich, perhaps for another time, I don't know if everybody's aware that you were part of a panel this afternoon about promoting civics education, and did a fantastic job representing, I believe, yourself and our district, and civics education for that matter. But nonetheless, this exam is, Mr. Duty is going to go over, not the exam itself, of course, but just talk about the structure and the topics which are very important to include on this exam. Mr. Duty?
Thank you, Mr. McElhaney. With the committee's permission, I'd like to present a little set of slides here, if I could, please.
Absolutely, Mr. Duty. I think you have permission. There you go.
Thank you. All right, so to begin with, a little background, as Mr. Heinrich and Mr. McElhaney mentioned, Act 35 of 2018 requires Pennsylvania Public Schools to administer a test of United States government and civics at least once to students between grades 7 and 12. And the law does specify that it can be an end of course assessment similar to a final exam. The school district's requirement, in addition to administering the test, is to prepare a report annually to PDE that presents aggregate results. So this is not something that students are going to be scored individually or in any way have affecting their individual grades or something like that, other than if the classroom teacher chooses to use this as part of their final exam grade. But as far as what the school district is presenting to PDE, it's a summary report, the number of students who took the test, the number of students who earned a passing score on the test. The statute itself permits the use of the federal government citizenship exam. That is what my department had originally recommended. However, a year ago, this committee declined that recommendation, and so we have spent some time in preparing a locally designed alternative assessment. And I want to acknowledge that three of my colleagues are also with me tonight. Mr. Burdig, Mr. Mossgrove, and Mr. Neal also contributed very much with the rest of my department. So the test itself that we're proposing is a combination of 50 multiple choice standards-based questions, as well as 2 free response questions that will be graded according to the rubric used with the Keystone exam and the other disciplines. These questions are drawn from 72 questions in a multiple choice test bank and 4 questions in a free response test bank. So we have, we're not giving every student the same thing. We're minimizing concerns about test security and integrity and that sort of thing. For those reasons of test security and integrity, we decided that it was best not to go over the test here in a question by question way tonight. But I want to share with you some sample questions to show that there is a diversity of the levels of thought that students are going to be expected to demonstrate. So for example, some of the questions on the test would fall into a recall or direct knowledge level. For example, one question, what part of government makes laws? And students will hopefully know that that is the legislative branch. Other questions fall into an application or understanding level. For example, why is the census important? So the student has to, first of all, know what the census is, know when it happens, know what it does. And then they also need to be able to distinguish that, in fact, the census is important for all 3 of those reasons. It determines the population, it determines our state's representation in Congress, and it also determines state eligibility for federal grant money. So this is, I think, a more thought-provoking question for the students. We've also included a series of questions that will require students to demonstrate social studies skills and critical thinking knowledge. So for example, students may be presented with a graph or with a political cartoon. This particular example is a graph showing the percentage of people identifying as Democrats and Republicans in the United States since the early 90s. And then students would be presented with a series of choices and have to be able to read the graph, have to be able to know something about political parties, have to be able to know something about partisanship, and have to be able to figure out the right answer. So it's requiring them to do several different tasks. And then finally, as I said, they would also be required to produce 2 free response questions. An example, and so these are in the analysis and synthesis category of thought. An example is to explain the constitutional system of checks and balances. So they need to know the idea of separation and powers. They need to know the idea that each branch has certain responsibilities, that each branch also checks the others, that no branch can operate independently of all the rest. And as I said, they would be scored on the 3-point rubric that the PDE uses for the scoring of the other constructed response questions on the Keystone exam. So it would be I think, very realistic experience for them. We certainly hope that they're going to respond as they do when they're taking the Keystone exams. In terms of are we covering our requirements, I want to share with you a little breakdown here in terms of the Pennsylvania Standards of Civics and Government. There are 4 areas in the standards, and as you can see, covers very well the first 3 of them. International relationships is something that's handled more in the history courses as we look at the role of the U.S. in the world and the U.S. becoming a major power in the world rather than in the individual civics government course. The other thing that helped to guide our thinking in this exam as a part of their requirements under Act 35, PDE created something called the Act 35 Civics Toolkit. And this resource is provided to school districts, divides the knowledge that PDE expects students to be able to show on this specific exam into 3 areas: civic knowledge, civic skills, and the actions of a citizen. And so our questions do try to attend to all 3 of those areas as well. The final thing that I want to highlight in this presentation are some logistical concerns or items. Act 35 does require administration of this test to begin this year. So we do have a little bit of urgency for the board to take this up in the near future so that we can be able to do this in May. Based upon the length of the time, as you know, Keystone tests are unlimited time for students. So we certainly don't want students to rush through 50 questions and reduce their scores because they're rushing. So we are looking at probably a minimum of 2 class periods with students being able to have extended time. Identified students may be exempted under the terms of Act 35 if that has been noted in their IEP. So that exemption has to be pre-existing there in the IEP document. So we'll have to work with the special ed colleagues to address that as needed. Administration and scoring of the test would be by our senior high faculty, and also then the collating of results. As I said at the beginning, the overall results need to be turned in by the central administration to PDE in an annual report. And the school district is also required by the law to provide a certificate to any student who is able to earn a perfect score on the test. As Mr. Heinrich said, just to conclude, we do have 2 separate items here on the agenda. So this is one, and that is that we have a mandate by the state that we need to administer a test starting this school year. And that really is separate from any other conversation about what other courses we want to have addressing the civics and government standards. So if there are questions specifically about this test, I'd be happy to try to respond.
Do we have any questions from the board? From the committee?
I'm just curious, Tom, if the test is that you're going to administer it, does the student have to put their name on the test and then the teacher's grade it, or do they get to enter it like anonymously and are assigned a number so that their identity isn't known?
If I may respond, what my current thinking on this is, obviously COVID here has challenged all of us to look at different ways of administering classroom assessments. So personally, I've subscribed to a website that I've uploaded my test to that allow the students to take those on their Chromebooks. And so there is no human scoring involved when it comes to multiple choice questions. For the free response questions, my expectation is that the 9th grade teachers would not do the scoring. And those of us, I know several of us have been AP exam scorers and so forth in the past. So we know how to handle these shortcut things pretty efficiently. So some of us who have the upper level grades would be able to score those free response questions.
Thank you.
Hey, Josie, go ahead.
My question, Bill, would be, I see that Act 35 is requiring us to be given at least once. Is it your proposal that it only be given once at the end of the senior year? Because if we are approaching civics and understanding of our government interdisciplinary, and I mean that through also history courses, would it not be appropriate to, since you're alternating the test, to do it more than once between 7th and 12th grade?
No,
it can be done at any time during those 5 years.
That's correct. It can be given at any time during the 5 years. Our proposal is that this would be given at the conclusion of the 9th grade civics and government course. That's when students have the bulk of their civics focused instruction. And so it makes the most sense to us. In the same way a student takes the Keystone Algebra at the end of their algebra course, they take the Keystone Biology at the end of their biology course. We don't propose to complicate this by, having students, delay it or defer it to some other point in their year. And the other thing, it was brought up, I also attended the seminar that Mr. Heinrich spoke at today. Governor Rendell brought up that he was a proponent of having a state Keystone exam. That's how our curriculum ended up in its current position 10 years ago, because we were faced with having a Keystone civics exam. So
I do remember that.
in
Yes.
in the possibility that someday PDE could come back to that topic, we like this in ninth grade. It offers opportunities for remediation if necessary. It offers us opportunities to address students who, for whatever reason, have missed taking the test in ninth grade. And in the same way that I don't think any of my colleagues in another department would recommend having a Keystone in 12th grade, we certainly would not recommend having the civics exam in 12th grade.
However, this is not a keystone, and my concern is this. You are graduating students, going out into the world, becoming voters. We had a wonderful presentation tonight on all the issues that are going to face them economically with Mr. Brocious. I'm just concerned that you're going to do this test in ninth grade, and by the time the student is ready to graduate in 12th grade and undertake either going on to college, but they will be of voting age. They will be able to participate in the political system, which they need to understand. Why not have a follow-up exam? I just don't see I understand having it after ninth grade civics. That is something that I can support. But 12th grade, you have interdisciplinary, you have your history, you have your electives. Why not have it also in the senior year?
Well, if I may, as I said before, I think we're again conflating these issues, which is what happened at the last meeting. Our mandate from the state is to give the exam. The state does permit it to be given every year if that's what we want to do. But our mandate is to give the exam, to report to the state the percentage of students who pass. I believe that's a separate conversation from whether or not we feel that 12th grade students are or are not prepared to be good citizens. Our requirement from the state is that we submit this data to them about what students know when they've completed a civics course.
I think what I'm trying to say is I understand that you're trying to fulfill a state requirement. I understand that. But I would think that civics education will go beyond just fulfilling a requirement. Since becoming an educated electorate is our goal in public education, I just thought that perhaps more than fulfilling a requirement, that's where my concern lies, Bill. Are we doing it just to fulfill a requirement? And how general is that test? I guess it's open to discussion. That's my concern. And I was around when they started to bring out the Keystone, social studies, etc. And I understand the problems with that. But if we're going to make a long-term commitment to citizenship, that's where I am. I just don't think fulfilling a requirement should be the only reason why we do something. Thank you for the time to speak, Mr. Harley.
You're welcome. Hey, well, we have to do the test, so we have to do it at some point.
Right.
And I also agree with Rosie that we need to make sure we're educating these kids in critical thinking of our democratic country. So maybe we can do both. Right now, all we're doing is approving the test.
Right.
Correct, Mr. Harley. I would share the exam with the board members privately this week, with the understanding that it is confidential, not to be shared with the general public, obviously. For any feedback that you provide, and we'd be presenting the test for approval next Monday night. If that would please the board.
is this test, I'm sorry, is this a national test, or is this a test that we developed?
It's a test that we developed. Mr. Duty and his team developed it over the last several months in order to satisfy Act 35.
Okay.
They originally, is his proposal, they originally proposed the citizenship test. We asked them to go back and come up with something a little bit more robust.
Okay, let's take a look at it, and we'll bring it forward to the board.
Tom, I'd like to make a suggestion.
Sure.
Okay, so we give this to our students after they finish their civics course in 9th grade. Why don't we also have them take it in 11th grade, just to see where they are at with remembering their civics, and so we can reassess on whether or not we can have them do another civics course before graduation, or do some kind of different instruction, just to see, how we can improve upon it.
And correct, that's a really great idea, Mrs. Blank. And correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Duty, but the department already gives some sort of exit civics literacy survey, or at least you did last year, and we plan to this year as well.
Yes, sir. If I may share my screen again, I can share those results.
No, let's not get too far afield here. We're talking about tonight.
Well, if I may address, excuse me, if I may address the issue, since I believe there was an implication that our students aren't prepared. If I may speak in defense of my department, I have given the survey to a sample of half of the senior class. Approximately 85% of them answered a majority of the questions correctly. 20 out of the 25 questions were answered correctly by a majority of the students. And those are students from a broad cross-section of the senior class. So my bottom line personally on this issue, if I may say so, is this is the fourth time that I've been asked before this committee to explain whether or not the social studies department is teaching students civics. The board has the discretion, as you know, to set the curriculum. If you want it taught in the 12th grade, then I think that's what the board should decide. But going over this over and over and over and over again is very respectfully becoming a little bit much.
I'm not trying to disrespect the civics at all. I think that we do a great job. I'm just saying that a majority of the young people, whatever their political affiliation, we heard statistics today at the panel about how a lot of them didn't vote, and that government and democracy wasn't working for them. I'm saying overall, I think we would do a better job for across any district to just make sure that we're doing, everything. That's all. I think we are doing a great job. My kids do. They're very active in civics. They're doing town halls. They're a little bit too outspoken, but I'm just saying that, how can it hurt to be more prepared? That's all.
Mr. Duty, I think one of the problems that you're facing right now is the board is really concerned about civics education, and our experience in the last few months here has been eye-opening. It's an important subject, and we do take it seriously. We're not pushing back on this because we are dissatisfied. We're wondering how to do a better job. We're wondering if we can do a better job. The conversation tonight is whether we're going to do a test or not, and we're going to do a test because it's mandated by the state, so we're going to pull that off. But we're going to keep pushing on education like we push on reading and math. I happen to believe that the civics education is a fundamental necessity in this republic.
Well, if I may, Mr. Harley, to your very specific point there, in the seminar this afternoon, Judge Rendell said that civics education should be strengthened in the elementary grades, and not being a course that seniors take on their way out the door.
And that's probably quite true.
Yeah, Mr. Duty, I agree with that. Boy, I think it has to be a little bit younger, but I support your test for 9th grade. So so you're saying you want this to come to the board on Monday night?
I leave that up to Mr. Heinrich, but
Is that what you're saying, Rob?
Yes, ma'am. The test, we're asking that the test be approved Monday night, and then we were supposed to read, so two different things. The test approved Monday night, and the board had asked, had been interested in looking at rearranging the scope and sequence of civics and government to enter into some sort of government course senior year. That is not something we have to come to a decision to tonight, but is definitely something we wanted to revisit at some point on this committee, ma'am.
Okay, so the only thing Monday night is whether or not we approve of this test.
That's correct.
Okay, Mr. Duty, thank you. I do think that district does a good job. I do think more should be worked into the elementary grades. The younger you learn it, the more it becomes habitual to you. But I think you've done a nice job on this test. I would like to see it if I could, but you have my support for the test itself on Monday night. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Rob, as I understand, you're going to circulate the test to the board?
Yes, ma'am. Or yes, sir. I'm going to get it to you tomorrow.
Okay, very good. Julie, I expect you to do 100% on it.
If I do, I want a certificate.
I'll make you one, I promise.
Okay, Tammy, that's great.
Okay, thank
Mike,
you.
can we go home now?
Yes, we are done, sir. Have a good night, everyone.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for staying with us.
Good night. Thanks, Tom.
Good night, all.